Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
With NRMA Combined Home Buildings and Contents Insurance, what else do I get?
I thought I opted cover. We offer cover if you accidentally forgot to lock your doors or windows.
Come on.
Yeah, run really late. Everybody who's tuning in.
Hey, Diane. Good to see you. Turn it down. Okay. Talking yet?
Strike down the darkness. We are a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free-thinking Christian.
Hey, Tricky. Good to see you,
I'd
bro.
like to bring you interviews of Strike Down the Darkness, as you'll hear in our intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Let's do the toast,
yeah, let's do it.
and then we'll do the obligatories. I'll lead this time.
Yeah,
I
you
led
lead.
last time, but I'll lead this time too.
Oh, okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that'll work.
All right. Grab your drinking vessels. Take up the broken sword of your father.
And strike down the darkness.
Cheers.
Cheers. You know, these are really cool mugs that one might be able to get from the Teespring page.
Are they not?
Yeah, but flanking old Leo here are another couple of interesting mugs.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about those in just a second.
That might also need some attention.
But I'll mention those. But first, before I do, I would like to say, if you haven't subscribed yet, we really appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us tremendously. And for those of you who are already watching, if you would like this video, that'd be amazing. It'll help feed the demonic algorithm. Demonic algorithm. But if you guys would hit the like button for us, really, really appreciate that. And if you've not subscribed, please do. Take up the broken sword of your finger, strike down the subscribe button, the bell, smack that bell so hard.
Yep.
And
Smack it like it owes you money.
Yeah.
Keep your pimp hand strong.
And now we'll talk about the Kothon Spartan mug.
Ring it like Liberty.
Ring it
And
like
crack it.
crack that bell.
Crack that bell.
Crack that.
Kill
subscribe
Tartaria.
button. The notification bell.
Anyways.
So this is the Kothon Spartan mug. This is handcrafted by Master Potter Joel Cherico from ChericoPottery.com up in Minnesota. He makes every single one of these by hand. They're beautiful, durable.
Looks like it'll hold a good beer.
These are essentially replicas of what the Spartan called the Kothon.
No
and
way.
carried with them. They were very. They didn't carry much.
Yeah.
They carried, as you can see from our guy here, they carried a banana hammock, and
They actually carried
a leather
quite a bit.
strap, a cape,
Yeah.
a helmet. They got some cool soccer knee shin guards down here,
Greaves.
and a shield.
Yeah.
That's it. And a Kothon Spartan mug, for sure they carried. But he made this in collaboration with Stephen Pressfield, who is a bit of a subject matter
Trust
expert,
me.
having written Gates of Fire. And anyway, check them out. Go to ChericoPottery.com. Get yourself a Kothon Spartan mug. Drink like a man. Drink like a Spartan.
That's right. Yeah.
Kothon.
And you know, like, if you read Gates of Fire,
I haven't got the mug, but I do drink like a Spartan.
you will find out that, like, this is actually incredibly anachronistic. Like, the Spartans were heavy infantry, and they ended up, like, they had squires. They had helot squires. They wore 80 pounds of bronze and leather and iron and cloth. Like they were basically like medieval knights. They were more heavily armored than everybody else, and they were like an impenetrable, intractable boulder in a path. Like that first part of 300,
They weren't dancing around like in 300, like magic.
Tricky, I'm Australian. We're known for loving our beer.
Mike with the
You should know they'd burn a pommy.
beard.
right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 300 is it truly is. It's a medieval or ancient magic might.
Mediterranean Mike.
Yeah, Mediterranean Mike. Yeah, yeah. You can hear the party music. Oh, Thoros, fetch me the olive oil. You know, I must be slick for battle. We call it pancration. But like the real Spartans were like mega based. They were like super high testosterone, ultra conservative, mega masculine, mega based, like hardcore.
Ass
dudes.
kickers,
There was a
yeah.
Spartan that had kind of that.
Probably, yeah.
Probably some had
I
guts,
mean, maybe
right?
like an older one, you know, like a retired Spartan, you know. Yeah, yeah. But like they were like the heaviest hitting
We're
dudes.
getting some laughs from
Out
that
there.
Mediterranean Mike.
Mediterranean Mike.
Melissa Rice joined us, by the way. Hey, good evening.
Hey,
Glad you're joining us as
thank
well.
you.
Okay, all right, let's move on to.
Yeah, before I get us in trouble.
Let's go on to
Who
Coke.
peeled all my grapes?
Let's talk about. Okay.
How
We are
dare
so off
Xerxes?
the rails right now.
Xerxes, you get back here. 2 million my Spartan fanny pack. I just hate 300 is all. I just want to like mock 300.
Oh, I love 300.
But you know what looks awesome in 300? Gerard Butler's beard.
Yeah, it
And that's
does.
kind of what I go for here.
Yeah, that's
all
not
the time.
working.
Beautiful segue.
Bringing it home. Bringing it home. Trying to salvage it. Trying to save myself. Courtesy of Mike Fisher's company, Giordani Jovanovic Hair and Skincare Products, made by real men for real men, or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Awaken your inner John Wick. What's the one? Nick's got the best one.
Give your better half a reason to doubt that.
I love it. That's awesome. Giordani Jovanovic Hair and Skincare Products. Everything from shampoos to face creams, lotions, beard pomade, beard oil, all sorts of stuff, even hair growth serum. Awesome stuff. Mike Fisher is a real sweetheart. He's a great friend of the channel, a friend of ours, and he runs that business, just him and his wife out of their home in Arizona, and a couple of Christian small business owners, and they deserve every bit of our support, so we like to give it to them whenever we can.
Absolutely.
And JordaniJovanovic.com is the place to go. Go and check out their stuff. Buy some stuff for the man in your life, or for yourself.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And we have an interview coming up that we're about to play for you guys. It's a little closer. We interviewed the phenomenal Vicky Joy Anderson,
Yes.
author of They Only Come Out at Night, Exposing the Dark Weapons of Paralysis. She talks about the Out of the Darkness conference and a couple other things. It was a phenomenal interview. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. We touched on SRA.
Yep.
Along with some other things related to that and demonic oppression and some of the things in our culture, some undercurrents that aren't obvious that we need to shed light on.
Yeah.
And you guys are really going to be, many of you are patrons and you guys have seen the full interview on Patreon. If you're not, go over to Patreon, sign up. You can see all that exclusive extra content. But we're going to play the first half of our interview with Vicky Joy here in just a second. And man, this is the second time we've had her back.
Yeah.
And she's twice as cool. She seems like.
Yeah.
She's just a joy to speak with.
She lives up to her name. That nominative determinism thing is definitely in play with Vicky Joy Anderson.
I'm always all of our guests are, they're all phenomenal people.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you walk away just feeling stupid. Like she's so intelligent and sharp. Like her method of her method of thought
Oh yeah,
is so impressive.
she has a really cool analytical mind.
Man, yeah, and she's an exquisite writer too. I mean,
Yeah.
if you buy her book to read, I mean, it's really it's
Yeah.
written almost like prose, like smooth prose. It's really nice.
And she's got a great story. You know, she's got a great testimony. You know about
Yep.
you know all the stuff that she overcame when she was little, and she's just a lot of fun. Like I come away from conversations with her feeling grounded a lot of times. Like she's just kind of like she's very authentic, which is like sort of a hallmark of what we do here.
Yeah.
You know, we're authentic. Our guests tend to be very authentic. You know, and we kind of strive for that authenticity. You know, and it really is like what you see is what you get. You know, and it's fun. It's cool. Like, you know, nothing about Vicky is like manufactured or, you know, putting on airs or like it's a good, honest, fun time. And she's fun.
Yeah.
Like Vicky is just like cool to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's not like, you know, just like, oh, so zoned in on her thing, you know, like you can talk Tommy Boy with Vicky.
Yeah.
You know.
And we did.
And we did. So anyways, yeah.
We'll be in the chat hanging with you guys. Anything else before we jump into it?
I just want to give a shout out to Gabriel Bello Music with so far the winning comment. Leonidas Bigelow. Which Vicky would have found that hilarious, by the way. That's the other thing. Like Gabriel Bello Music, Gabe is a good friend of ours and he has an amazing channel. Everybody should go check out his channel as well. So anyways, without further ado, but not until after you're done watching this, or maybe pull up a separate tab under another Google account and watch both at the same time.
Not a bad idea. All right, here we go. Vicky Joy Anderson. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll be back halfway through.
Yep.
Your YouTube feed. It's crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Gosslings interview live stream and podcast. The Gosslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards. We trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Gosslings.
I want to ask you our patrons question.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have patrons at a certain level that we give them the opportunity to forward a question to our guests. And this is by our patron, American Cars.
Yeah.
And he says, Vicky, what were some of the best resources you found when researching spiritual warfare? I'm still not clear on what the spiritual realm can and cannot do, and what we as children of the Lord can and cannot do in response. What are our authorities, etc.?
Yep, that's a great question. By way of like stuff to put on your bookshelf, I would recommend anything Greg Reed, and that's R-E-I-D, not R-E-E-D. Greg Reed is the old guard. He was there in the 80s. In fact, his work, the things that they were exposing, his team were exposing in the 80s, is what necessitated the whole satanic panic movement. They were making so much progress in exposing the underbelly of generational Satanism that they had to come in and do a cleanup. And so that's how a satanic panic came about. And my theory is anytime, whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter what you're trying to get someone to believe. If you have a cute little rhyme, you win the game. So if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Satanic panic, it rhymes. Mm-hmm. And then anyone who thinks on the opposite side of that rhyme is just a fool. So unfortunately for us, panic rhymes with satanic, so we kind of lost that round. But Gregory Reed was behind that. He's written many books, and he is an expert in that field. One thing, and this is, I got to be careful how I say this because I'm not asking people to, grab their torches and be looking for trouble. But a lot of what I learned about spiritual warfare, I learned firsthand going through it. And I think that sometimes we're going through spiritual warfare, and because we're not as sober-minded and vigilant as we are supposed to be, we don't even recognize it. There's a lot of what I would maybe call low-level spiritual warfare that we just think, this is where the enemy is brilliant with the condemnation he puts in our head. Something will go wrong in our life, and he'll get us to believe, well, I deserve that because I did such and such. I went out and I had sex when I was a teenager, so I deserve this. It's a consequence. And so he completely deflects the fact that he's needlessly tormenting you, and with a word, he would have to go away by you thinking this is a burden I have to bear because I sinned. And so I think even just becoming aware of the low-level warfare in our life and learning just firsthand how to pray against it, you learn what works and what doesn't work when you're applying it in your own life. There's way more to be learned about spiritual warfare in the scriptures. I think a lot of people, they go for these glossy covered books with, the dragons and the demons and the beasts and the Baphomets on the front, and then we neglect the Bible because we think, well, other than Ephesians 6 and maybe a little bit in Revelation and Daniel, like, it really doesn't talk a lot about spiritual warfare. But the Bible is a handbook on spiritual warfare. It is a cosmic war from the time that the serpent shows up in the garden until the very last chapters of Revelation. You have spiritual warfare going on in everything. And so I think that going to scripture every day and reading it with the aid of the Spirit of God, and carefully reading it and asking the Spirit to guide, and I don't like the word illuminate. I know that that's what we're supposed to say. The Holy Spirit's supposed to illuminate what you read, but that is such a charged word now, and it's such a—
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's been hijacked by the New Age, and I'm not so sure I want anybody illuminating anything.
And just like COVID, the flu mutates, so there's no point getting the vaccination because it mutates and comes out with something new next year. There's absolutely no point to getting the flu shot. It's absolutely ridiculous that people are still doing it. And I can't believe, Gabe, when I try to talk to her about it, she shuts me down. I don't want to talk about it. So, okay.
For me, so I don't really like that word, but you pray as you read the scriptures, and we have to start looking at the scripture like steak.
Nah, Tricky, she won't listen to it. She's on board with everything else I do, but yeah, there's no telling her.
I always tell my dad loves steak, and he always wants to go to steak restaurants. I hate going to steak restaurants, and he's like, it's just like the best food on the planet. It's expensive. It's fancy. Like, why don't you want steak? And I'm like, it just takes too long to chew it. Like, I'm just lazy. Like, I just want a nice comfort food. But, you have to take these little bites, and then you have to chew and chew and chew. And that is what scripture is. And we have turned the Bible into mac and cheese. We've turned it into something that we can just shovel into our mouth, and it's soft, and you don't even need teeth. You just mush it with your palate and like chug it back to the beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have turned the Bible into mush. We've turned it into comfort food, and we have to bring it back to the point where this is a filet mignon, and we're not going to chug this down because it costs $30 to $40, and we want to taste it. We want to savor it. We want to smell it. We want to take bites. We want to chew. We want to get every ounce of flavor out of it. When we turn the Bible into mac and cheese, we miss the point that there's a lesson in demonology and spiritual warfare and how to equip ourselves to work against the devil in every page. And so there's great resources out there. I'd say, hey, go to the Shadow the Darkness website of Russ Dizdars. Go to Through the Black. Go to Greg Reed. There's great things out there. My friend and colleague Colleen Danes, she has a book called The Lie Effect, and if this is an excellent book if you're an SRE survivor. Great things in there about prayers and spiritual warfare in the modern day and what they're doing with the technology and things to pray against. There's great resources out there. But if you're obtaining those resources to the neglect of the scripture, you're getting pre-digested food. You're getting the food that somebody else chewed first.
Yeah.
So
All
this
right,
is like a
Talia.
bird that chews
Good to
the
see
food
ya.
and spits it into the mouth. So I prefer a steak that no one's previously chewed. So we go to the scriptures first, and we don't ever overlook the fact that the Bible has something to say on every topic that is relevant to our Christian walk. And so we might have to dig deeper. I love that little adage. I went to a church once where it was hanging up in the church library. If you rake, all you get is leaves. If you dive, you might get pearls. And it's the fact that diving requires training, certifications, expensive equipment, knowledge, patience. If you want the pearls, you're going to have to invest. And if you just want to get up every day and do your 5-minute devotional or listen to a sermon on your drive to work while you're thinking about 1,000 other things and distract the traffic, you're going to get a bag of leaves. That's great. You raked and you got the bag of leaves, but all you got at the end of the day is the bag of leaves.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And this is something that you touched on something that drives me nuts. And I'm not going to name any particular church, but in many churches that I've been in, it's been very, you can call it surface level. We're going to open the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the most surface level.
Guys, speaking about churches, Hillsong in Australia, that's where Hillsong originated, Australia. Someone tabled in Parliament like thousands of pages of their corruption and money laundering. So Hillsong's about to get busted really bad.
Well, it is what it says, right? Just take it at face value. It is what it says, and you don't have to think any farther beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of almost like taking a passage of scripture and just being milquetoast about it. And the whole time I'm thinking it means, there's so much context to this.
Mm-hmm.
There are prophetic passages related to this. I mean, there's more, and we're not diving deeper. It's like what, and I think I think churches do that because they want to kind of, in a way, tailor the presentation to unbelievers or new believers, and they don't want to overwhelm them with depth.
I want it to be accessible.
Give them the depth. Throw it all at them.
Absolutely.
Give them the whole meal. Give them the whole steak. If it's too much for them, they can eat the broccoli.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think with pastors, and especially youth pastors, I think we have settled for this notion that people don't have a desire for that depth, and so we're giving them what we think they want. And I think that we have really underestimated how ravenous the appetite is for truth. Pilate asked it, what's truth? But I think even teenagers, it looks like they're more interested in their friends and their social media and all these stereotypes we have of them. If we actually fed the kids in our youth group with deep, profoundly theological concepts, it would awaken a latent part in them. And if we could show them the Bible through the eyes of Michael Heiser and L.A. Marzulli and Tom Horn, if we could show the scriptures through less of a 15th, 16th, 17th century liturgical view, and if we brought out the supernatural aspects of it and we started showing them who God really was and what this unfolding redemptive plan really meant and how it pertains to them, I think that these kids would eat it up. And so this idea of keeping people happy by giving them almost nothing. Another thing that I think has been a very subtle shift, it's almost been unnoticeable, and it's happening in the pulpit and it's happening in our worship music. And that is that it has a sense of being very biblical and very spiritual because Jesus's name is being used, God's name is being used, scripture is maybe being quoted here and there, but the crux of what's being talked about is man-centered rather than God-centered. And so what you're really getting is a moral lesson. You know, I'm approaching my congregation as a pastor on the assumption that everyone in the pulpit is going through a rough time, and there's financial issues, and there's marriage issues, and there's kid issues. So I am going to be a glorified group counselor this morning, and I'm going to cherry pick scriptures to help comfort this extremely depressed, broken, apathetic group of people. And what doesn't happen then is people leave with the Band-Aid, because all that's really been spoken about is man, which is not an inspiring sermon. If we could forget about ourselves for 40 minutes a week, okay? You've got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If on Sunday morning you could just let the pastor for 40 minutes, we're not going to talk about you or your problems or your life. We are for 30, 40, 60 minutes, however long your pastor's sermon is, we're going to focus on the power, the presence, the love, the nature, the character of God, his plan, his will, what he's unfolding. If we could catch a vision for the magnitude of who this God is. And pastors, you can get away with it. People that are coming to church expect to hear church stuff. Like, it's not like they're going to get up and walk out because you pulled the Bible out. They're there voluntarily. So put them aside. If they want to come to a Wednesday night worship service, or they want to come to a marriage counseling session, or they want to join a small group and commiserate with one another, that's great. That church exists for that too. But on Sunday morning, for 30 minutes, can we just stop talking about us for 30 minutes? Can we open the word and focus on God? 30 minutes, it's all we're asking.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like a healthy escapism. It's the same reason why people go to the movies. You know, you go to the movies, you go to see Top Gun 2, which is awesome, because you don't want to, like, think about your day job, which sucks, you know, or you don't want to think about, like, your health, which sucks, you know, or you don't want to think about your family, which sucks, you know. So, like, you know, and so we all go to those things, and, like, if you really kind of, like, boil it down, there are these weird Venn diagram overlaps between going to a movie and going to church, you know.
there are.
Especially if you can use the same approach of escapism, but it can be something nutrient dense. You know, it's not an empty calorie fantasy escapism. It's a healthier kind of escapism. And
I don't know, kind of like a Sabbath.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh, the S word.
What do you know?
Weird. It's like we've come all the way back.
Yeah, right?
Go ahead. Sorry.
That was abolished, you guys.
How dare we?
Well, Lord's Day. It's the new Sabbath.
We have 9 commandments now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, it's better than having 11 commandments, as Bodhi Bacham puts it, which is, you know, the 11th commandment is be nice. You know, thou shalt be nice.
That's a tough one there. I'll stick with the 10. No, I like what you were saying though, Jonathan, because I think with this escapism thing, and I've lamented that and talked about that myself, that when we preach an easy believism that is very easy for someone, especially someone who's emotionally distraught or broken, to receive, if you preach an easy believism, that might fail when the faith is tested or things get really rough. I know back in the Johnny Erickson Tata, the quadriplegic who has a ministry out of Southern California, when she was 17 years old, she prayed and asked God, I want to take you seriously. I want to really love you with all my heart. I really want to get closer to you. And this is her words and her theology. This isn't me saying it. She had a diving accident and broke her neck, you know, and I don't want to say that this is what God does. Hey, you pray to be close to him and he's going to put you in a wheelchair. Don't hear me saying something like that. What I'm saying is there is no way we could ever tell a potential convert who we want to pray that magic prayer. There's no way we could ever stress enough to them. the price tag that comes along with that prayer. Okay, it is a tough pilgrim's progress walking with the Lord. And so when you appeal to a broken person in a moment of great need, and you're blasting worship music that can be very manipulative if used properly, and your dopamine is releasing from their heads because all these drums are going and bass is coming up through the floor, and you're only promoting the wonderful out of context promises, and it's the
Yeah, Diane, they're doing it to fight inflation apparently, but they've gone up about, I'm not exaggerating, about 6 or 7 times every 3 months since about 2021 or maybe 2022.
Jesus is going to be your best friend
A lot of hungry families. The electricity bills are going through the roof as well.
forever, and he can
As
do
they
all
shut
things.
down
And
coal power
if
plants.
that is what people are signing up for, and 6 months into the journey, that's not what they're getting, this is where you see this falling away of people and this idea that God has failed them, because for them, and it's not their fault, it's the way it's being presented to them, the church and that community and that sense of belonging and the excitement and the thrill that comes out of that initial.
They're also shutting down coal power plants, and we're getting shorted on electricity, and the electricity bills are going through the roof. Businesses have to close down. The bills are climbing that much. Yet they're still shutting down power plants, coal power plants.
So coming to Jesus moment, if all that is theological psychotropic medication, where okay, it's gonna wear off. It's gonna wear off. And so I think that with the church and all of the bells and the whistles and the fog machines, at some point we got to just get back to the keep it simple.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Gabriel Bello says the same thing. The saxophone musician friend of ours.
Gabe Bello music.
Yeah, dude, and he lives it. He's in churches all the time playing, and he sees it everywhere. Pete from Creepy Little Book says the same thing. That's like one of his biggest points of contention with the church, is just how it's like a concert with Starbucks, an emotional catharsis.
Yeah.
And John Howler talked about it with the Asbury thing,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's being reductive. Obviously, there's probably some truly transformative experiences going on in those things. Qualifiers. But
Can I ask what your opinion of Asbury is?
Oh yeah.
I really didn't follow it much, and so I don't really know what was going on. But what I will say is, with things like that, we'll know by the fruit.
Yeah.
When will this fizzle out? If it does, there were all sorts of things being said at the time, and even now, about all of the downsides to the Jesus movement of the 1960s as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been a lot of people that fell away after that or whatnot. But the fact is, it's 25 years later, and there's a whole church movement that came out of that. And so there was some fruit. And I kind of think of it too like 9/11. Remember how churchy everybody got after 9/11, and everyone, and it didn't last much more than 6 months, and it was gone. It fizzled out. And so it's never easy to tell in a moment whether or not something was effective or not. And we know that even if it was something of the devil, God can use whatever he wants for good. And so I'm just holding out for the fruit. I want to see the fruit of it. And our disciples going to come out of it? Because this is the thing. We have reduced the Great Commission to how many people sign a card or how many people raise their hand. Anyone given the right set of circumstances on the right day, you could get Aleister Crowley to pray that prayer. I mean, and I'm not facetious. Given the right set of circumstances on the right day with the right person, when all the planets aligned, you could get anyone to pray that prayer. Yeah. And so this measurement, this measuring rod that we use of how many people signed a card, how many people came forward, how many people raised their hand, what the Great Commission is about is making disciples. And those disciples replicate by then making their own disciples. And disciples who have been taught all that Jesus commanded and are walking in those commands. So at the end of the day, if 40 billion people on the planet all of a sudden prayed a prayer or gathered in their town squares and worshiped God, not that God couldn't glean glory out of that, but is that the same thing as long-term discipleship and fruit? So I don't really know. I don't have a firm opinion one way or the other because I didn't really follow it. But we'll know by the fruit.
Very wise answer. Great question, honestly. You had mentioned Russ Disdar's Shadow of the Darkness. They kind of actually was a question I was going to ask you. America in Cars, the one who had the Patreon question, he and I were talking earlier today, and he had mentioned Russ Disdar, and I had never heard of him before. Apparently, he wrote a book called The Black Awakening, Satanic Super Soldier, or The Rise of Satanic Super Soldiers and the Coming Chaos. We've been kind of dancing around a lot of this, talking about chaos magic in the Patreon exclusive. We're talking about, you had mentioned Shadow of the Darkness. We're talking about the Satanic Panic. And Russ Disdar, if I remember from my conversation correctly, he and his wife died within a week of each other last year. They were based out of Georgia. What they were talking about in that book, what are your thoughts on that? And is there a correlation to what they were talking about with the trafficking and the SRA and the sort of MK Ultra-esque super soldier thing that they are kind of building? And what are your thoughts on SRA?
Yeah, absolutely. Loaded questions, but we'll take one of here.
I know. I forgot about that.
Russ and Shelley Disdar, they were actually out of Canton, Ohio. And
okay.
Yep. And they died within 2 weeks of each other. And interestingly, for those who travel in these circles, Rob Skiba died. 2 weeks later, Russ died. 2 weeks later, Shelley died. At the same time that this was going on, Steve Quayle was near death. Tom Horn was in the hospital near death. And there was a lot going on there.
So there was a Flint Creek basically going on against these people.
Absolutely. It was crazy. And this was 2021, so we're still in all the COVID nonsense and all this stuff. So this is going on, and October is a huge month of occult rituals and activity, not just with Halloween, but there's all sorts of occult activity. There's reverse Halloween, so things really get started on October 13 all the way up to the 31st, and then you've got the old Celtic Halloween and all this stuff, right? So anyway, Russ and Shelley passed. Now, what Russ was sort of known for, what he did well, was he did a lot of cold case occult crime, and he worked at one time with the Canton Police Department training the officers in occult crime. And he had access to cold cases, and his team, it used to be called SIIU, and they've rebranded now since his death, and they're the Shatter Ops team. And the Shatter Ops team is actually teaming up with the Through the Black team at the end of this month, March 31st, in Brooksville, Ohio, which is in the Dayton area. And the Shatter Ops team and the Through the Black team will be putting on the Out of the Darkness conference. And we're going to be there. Greg Reed is going to be there. And we're going to be doing freedom encounters there. There's going to be great speakers there and breakout sessions. But I just want to put a shout out to anyone listening. If you want freedom from any of this stuff we're about to talk about, any sort of ritual abuse, satanic ritual abuse, demonic oppression, sleep paralysis, any of that, we are there. We have counselors set up in back rooms to meet with and pray with and do deliverance with people. So if you go on to the throughtheblack.com website, right there on the homepage, you can click on the Out of the Darkness icon. I think tickets are around $50, give or take. The tickets are very affordable. And so check that out if that's of intrigue to you. But Tom Dunn, who runs Through the Black, who's my co-host, we do shows, well, Through the Black has shows 6 nights a week, Sunday all the way through, Monday through Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern on Through the Black 2, which is a YouTube channel. And Tom, to get back to the topic at hand, Tom was personally mentored under the tutelage of Russ Dizdar. They knew each other for many, many, many years. And Through the Black is a adjunct of that. Tom then spread out on his own. This is what we were talking about minutes ago, making disciples. And then the disciples going out. Like, you don't stay in your little comfort zone with your mentee, then you are equipped to go out and influence where you're at. So that's how Through the Black came into being.
Cool.
But the book Black Awakening is very specifically talking about the super soldiers. So this goes all the way back to the MK Ultra days. This goes back to Hitler and the Ubermensch, the Superman, that they were the kind of the precursor to the transhumanism movement. And so the rise of the super soldiers, and that is this idea that those in the generational Satanist underground have been doing these mind control rituals and have been programming an entire army of individuals. So these super soldiers are people who basically have been MK Ultra, for lack of a better word. Some of them might be aware of the fact that they're a super soldier, some may not. There's embedded triggers. A lot of them know foreign languages. They don't know they know. Almost.
Oh, wow.
The old guard, I think we're on either the 4th or 5th generation of generational Satanists who have been in this program. In the past, every single programmed person could speak fluent German. And so one of the old tests for determining whether or not someone had alters or dissociative identity disorder is if you triggered them, they would be able to speak German. So that was kind of one of the giveaways in the past. But anyway, these super soldiers, here's the theory. The theory is that when the time is right and the Antichrist hits the scene, that it's like a 5th column idea. So in the old days of warfare, your enemy could come from the north, the east, the south, or the west. But the most dangerous of all was the 5th column, and that was the Trojan horse. That was when the army was
among you.
It was among you, and you didn't know it. And so when the war shofar went, they're right there. It doesn't matter. You don't lock the city gates. They're in there with you. And so basically, when this time comes to fruition, and this is where the enemy is unfortunately way more equipped and pre-planned out than the church. Yeah. The church's plan is, when the crap hits the fan, I hope that shofar sounds and I get sucked into heaven by the heavenly Hoover, right? That's our plan. Is we're going to get sucked off the planet and not have to deal with it. But meanwhile, the Satanists, and I'm talking about the underground people you would never know are Satanists. These are not the people running around in black nail polish with their Megadeth t-shirts. Those guys are jokes. Those guys are dabblers. A real Satanist will never let you know. You'd never suspect it. The underground generational Satanists, they're the ones preaching at your Baptist church. They're the ones leading your Bible study. They're the ones who did Sunday school. And I'm not joking. That's where they are. Yeah. And so the underground church, the underground satanic movement, they have been working on this for a millennia, and they are prepared. They have an army ready to go. And when the time is right and they are triggered, this is the plot line of the Black Awakening. And good luck getting your hands on a copy of that now.
I tried. I can't.
Hi guys.
Yeah.
I spent like an hour today scouring the internet, and I mean, truly, like a full hour.
Yeah.
Digging through the internet. You cannot find one. It's definitely one of those naughty books.
Yep. If you got $800 or $900 burning a hole in your pocket, you can find 1 or 2 here and there. But yeah. So, but the plot line of the Black Awakening is that when the Antichrist says go, these latent super soldiers are going to wake up And all of a sudden, we're going to have potentially millions of triggered, armed.
And guys, remember I showed that super soldier at the Ferguson riots? Like, he's about 10 foot tall and like 4 foot wide, and the other guys only come up to his belly button.
And dangerous, mind-controlled, under this satanic influence, people who can kill and destroy. And just think of the power that, like, did you guys ever have to see those movies in health class when you were in high school, where they were showing like police footage of guys getting arrested who were on LSD, and they had like superpowers, and it would take like 10 guys to hold them down, and they'd get shot like 5 times, and they're like, this is just a hint of what we are dealing with here. And because at this point they are, in addition to all of the mind control and the programming and the training, they also have a demonic base. They're a vessel for some sort of demonic force as well. And so you potentially, what do you want to call it? A demon, an entity? Basically, all of the disembodied Nephilim from antediluvian days find a vessel. Now they got this body, this willing vessel. And so it's humans, but they're of superhuman strength, and they're probably some sort of demonic or Nephilim type of soul put into that, entering into that body at that point. And so if the church doesn't get gloriously raptured before any of this happens, we better have a plan B. When scripture says to be prepared, that means that the rapture is a great idea, but what's plan B? No army is going to go under foreign soil with one plan that's going to work perfectly. So the Bible is an extremely militaristic book. It's a military handbook, as Jamie Walden points out perfectly in his book, Omega Dynamics. But there is so much military language in the scriptures, like the Great Commission, even commission, like that's a military term.
Yep.
Okay, Talia, I'll find it. Hang on.
And so I don't understand.
Super soldier at the Ferguson riots. And there it is. Okay, Talia, check this out. Do it again. They have stopped it. Look how big he is next to the other soldiers. The other soldiers come up to his titties, his breasts. One more time. So apparently there's 1 million of them underground. So we're going to be fronting them soon. Where was I with? There it was.
Understand why there's so much military language in this book, and so much about preparation and sober-minded, and so much information on who our enemy is, and so much tactical information on warfare, like in Ephesians 6. Why is all that there if we're going to just get sucked up into the sky and not ever have to face any sort of trouble? And I'm not trying to push some sort of pre or post trib. I actually have some ideas about that would really not fit into any modern eschatological context, because I don't think that it's as simple as pre or post. But without digressing into a complete and utter mind swamp known as Vicky Joy's head. What I'm saying, I'm not trying to make a point of pre or post trib. What I'm trying to make a point of is if we glom onto any eschatological theory, and that's the one and only thing that we're going to believe and nothing else, then we are not obeying the scriptures that tell us to be prepared, because preparation means you have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. I mean, even in our house, we have all sorts of plans for, like, what if there's a fire in the kitchen? We'll do this. But what if the fire's in the basement? Well, then we'll do that. Or what if someone breaks in and my mace is all the way upstairs in my bedroom? And what do I do if someone breaks in and my handgun is locked in a safe that I can't ever get open because I can't fumble the lock? And so no one who feels that their life is being threatened would come up with one plan and not think of every single window or door that enemy could come in. So I don't really care what people believe eschatologically. I don't get.
They may have AI chips in their brain because we know they're trying to do that. So if they've grown soldiers that are like 10 foot tall and 4 foot wide, it's not beyond them to put a chip in their head and make it AI. But I believe the actual body's flesh and bones.
I get upset when people say one thing or that. I don't have enough energy at this point in life to bicker with every single person as to when they think Jesus is coming back. What is of importance?
And Talia, he wasn't just tall, he was super wide. He was a huge man.
To me, though, is that we're commanded to be sober-minded, vigilant, and prepared. Yeah. And so being prepared means I'm going to a picnic on July 4th, and I'm going to bring my picnic basket and my boombox with all my favorite music and my Frisbee and all the food I like and my cooler full of beer. And it's not going to rain because that would ruin it. And I don't like rain. And so I'm not going to bring an umbrella, and I'm not going to bring a tent. And I don't like ants and bugs all over, so I'm not going to bring bug spray because I don't like them and I don't want them to be there. That's not preparation. Preparation means ideally I want this picnic to be wonderful, but I'm going to bring the bug spray in case there's a whole bunch of bugs. I'm going to bring the umbrella in case it rains. We have all of these things. Everywhere we go, we're bringing suntan lotion and umbrellas. And so you're going to prepare more for a family picnic than you're going to prepare for Satan coming back to the planet to kill us all? I mean, come on, we've got to think this through, guys.
Yeah, I agree. You hear that? People in the comments who glob onto one eschatological theory and just demonize everybody who doesn't fit in that box.
Rapture fight 2023.
I mean, these people are just like ruthless. I've never seen Christians being so just cold-hearted to other Christians because they don't share the same idea as to when the rapture happens, when the big Hoover truck happens. You know, be prepared. That what you just said, there's so much reason in what you just said. If you believe it's going to be whatever pre-trib, great, but be prepared. Because what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
Are you prepared? Or are you just going to completely fall apart and not know what's going on?
I'm hoping pre-trib, and there's a lot of signs to say that, but I'm playing it safe and expecting post-trib just in case.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the reverse is true as well. I'd rather be prepared and get Hoover sucked before everything happens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Than not get Hoover sucked and then not be prepared.
Yeah, not have any kind of a plan. You know? Yeah.
That just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of other ways that society can be like heavily destabilized outside of just your rampant PCP AR blasting, you know, possessed bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys can go around, and there are water treatment plants, you know, there are power grids, there are food supplies, railways, you know, there are all sorts of things that you can do to disrupt, destabilize, you know, fifth generation warfare, and the notion of fifth columnists, it presents itself in a myriad of ways.
Yeah.
And You know, that's like where that whole, you know, prepping community like actually comes in handy, and where like being a 2A proponent really comes in handy. Cause like, yeah, dude, you know, all that stuff.
What if?
What if? Yeah, you know, and it's better to like spend the money on something that's just gonna like collect dust, you know, than, well, you know,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's a lot of like the mass shooters and school shooters that we see. Whether they're actually the people that get arrested or not is a whole other thing. But I think there are a lot of demonically possessed entities in the alphabet soup agencies of our government that are going around doing a lot of wet works. You know, I mean, look at Ruby Ridge and Waco. You know, and not that like David Koresh was an awesome guy or anything, but I know whose side I was on.
Yeah, well, if you're the enemy,
You know?
if you had soft targets high up in these agencies or high up in the government, why wouldn't you go after them and try to influence them, possess them, control them? I mean, why would you not want to?
Well, it's like
at those levels.
Vicky, did you ever see season 1 of True Detective?
No.
Oh, you would love it. It's amazing, and they kind of touch on this before this stuff was really popular. There's a character in there who is a preacher, and he very much is like exactly what you're talking about. He's an undercover Satanist, and he's like the biggest preacher of the biggest mega church. You know, he's kind of a Kenneth Copeland type. You know, and yeah, he's like secretly doing these satanic child sacrifice rituals. You know, out of the woods, and yeah. I mean, yeah, you know, look at Bohemian Grove. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. This stuff will turn you into Alex Jones.
I know. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because what's fascinating to me to kind of tie all this in with what we were talking about previously with the eschatology is many people, Christian and non-Christian, in the last 3 years definitely, but even in the last 10 years, we have had this aha moment that a lot of what we have believed our whole life about the government, about the church, about the Bible, has been total deception, has been lies, has been cover-ups. And so we're open to the fact that, you know, the whole entire Democrat-Republican system of government might be just a big, you know, triggered, like rigged hoax. We're willing to believe that, you know, Washington, D.C. was set out with, you know, Illuminati symbols and the obelisks of Osiris and all this. Like, we're willing to see that Washington might have been a Mason and Ben Franklin was a pervert. And, you know, so our whole entire concept of our country, and now there's all this stuff coming out about authentication and maritime law and all of this stuff where Federal Reserve Bank and 9/11 and the sinking of the Titanic and JFK, all this stuff, right? So if we are open-minded enough to think, okay, maybe I was absolutely wrong about the entire history of my country, the entire economic system here, and even the whole church and some of the roots of Catholicism and Christianity, if you take the roots all the way back, there's a lot of, you know, Mithra in there, there's a lot of Roman stuff in there. So if we're going to come to a place where everything's been shattered, the paradigm's been shattered, we realize a lot of this has been smoke and mirrors, then why is eschatology that one thing that's never been touched and has never been affected and has never been corrupted? Why is this?
Wow.
Why are the very limited eschatological, you know, buckets that we've been told it's either this, or this? Why are those somehow sacred? That because those sort of things were not always preached, and you know, we preached Revelation through 21st century, very post-Stoic, postmodern Christian eyes. It was not written by a postmodern American. That book was written by, you know, a Semitic man who lived in a completely different century. And so the idea that I love is, you know, this goes back to, I think, some of the stuff we were talking about in the stuff that's only going to be available for the Patreons, and that is fear of man will get you every time. Fear of man. So if my entire eschatology is really rooted in I'm afraid to die, I'm afraid to be tortured. If every single thing that we read in the Bible has to somehow bend to the fact that I'm never going to get hurt, a hair on my head is never going to get singed, I'm never going to break a nail, if that's our doctrine, then we're not going to be open to some of the other clues in Scripture. And God has never been real black and white, from what I can tell. There seems to be nuances. Like even take the Red Sea. We can either drown in the sea or get killed by Pharaoh's army, because we can go forward or we can go backward. We have been groomed into a dualistic view of the world. Everything is black or white, red pill or blue pill, Democrat or Republican, gay or straight, man or woman. We've been forced into this two-dimensional world where God is operating in 1,000 dimensions. It's like this massive diamond with all these facets, and we haven't even seen half of them. But somehow we're putting God into this box where your son can return at 1 of 3 points in world history. And where in the world did that get written down? Where is that the rule? And so one of the things that I'd like to just explore intellectually and philosophically, this is just musing. I'm not going to put this in stone and try to find the ark to put it in. But my theory is more, what if the reason why pre-tribbers, mid-tribbers, and post-tribbers can all find so much biblical support for their view? What if the reason they can all find biblical support for their view is because all three are true? So let's go back to the military concept. In the military, when a war is over and the decoration ceremony is about to occur, it's not like everybody gets a participation award and everybody gets a ceremony. Is contingent upon what role you played in that war and what you accomplished. And we even see this concept on Judgment Day, like the Bema seat, which is the judgment. It's been so misconstrued. The Bema seat isn't a judgment seat where we all go to heaven and the jumbotrons get turned on and everybody sees, me stealing the chapstick and all the stupid stuff with it. The Bema seat is not a time of humiliation. This is a time where the people who have faithfully served the Yehovah Tsevaot, the God of the armies of heaven, are being rewarded for a sacrificial life of holiness. And by holiness, I mean they departed from Babylon. Okay, so this is an award ceremony, and even the word Bema seat, it was a reference to the Olympics, where you've got the gold, the silver, and the bronze medalists stand on that platform. That's the Bema seat. That's where you're standing to get your medal. And the Bema seat has positions for gold, silver, and bronze. This idea that every single Christian who's ever lived is going to all jump onto that top gold medal spot and be teetering on this thing and everyone's getting their gold medal. So when you look at the scriptures that talk about the end, we have references to people who die trying to defend the vulnerable. You've got the Jamie Waldens out there. You got the people with the spirit of a warrior. They're not going to stand for this. They're not going to live underground and drink their urine through a purification straw. They're going to go out in a blaze of glory on the battlefield, fighting for what's right. They're going to charge out there with their weapons. They're probably going to die trying, but they're going to die, and they're going to get that Medal of Honor. They laid down their life. They were the heroes. They get the top honor. But then you've got people that the church is trying to make out to be like, these are the weak ones. There's ones that are tested for 10 days. And after the 10 days, they're beheaded. That's still a glorious position because you're a martyr. You get a martyr's crown for that. You get a martyr. You get the Purple Heart for that. It's a position of honor. And so then you've got people that are blessed because they remained till the end. Mm-hmm. But if we're all raptured, then we all remained to the end. So, but the people that remain to the end means that maybe there's a group of people that do survive, a remnant that survives through the flood, like in the days of Noah. 8 people survived that tribulation. That was the Old Testament end times, end of everything. Everybody died. 8 people lived through it. So what if there is a group of people that do survive to the end, and they're not in some torture chamber getting their fingernails pulled out and being forced to drink their own urine? What if these people are being hidden in God? What if there's a hint here in Psalm 27 where it says that in the day of trouble, when war surrounds you on every side, he will set me high upon a rock. And this is after talking about being in his temple. What if there is some sort of dimensional atmosphere where there are people that are hidden to the end, like in the days of Noah, and they come through the end? What if this is the, they get the prize too, because they survived to the end. So here we have 3 different people, 3 different categories, all 3 of highly decorated military honors, because they all faithfully got their souls in the end and they survived. But we've got people that died in valor on the battlefield.
Yeah.
We have people who survived torture and gave up their own lives because the treasure buried in the field was greater to them than their life. And then we've got the people who remained until the end, hidden in Christ with God because they were his bride and his chosen people. All 3 highly, highly decorated people in heaven. So this limitation we put on God by, you either have to rescue all of us so that one hair doesn't get out of place, or the only other option is that we're stuck down here as all the bowls of wrath are being poured out, and we're all going to experience this like torture. And what this does, and what I don't like about these categories, is it makes the entire church dread the coming of Jesus. You see what he has done here. We're supposed to be praying according to the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come. Every day we're supposed to be saying, thy kingdom come. So if every day we're doing everything in our power to stop the end times, let's thwart the enemy, let's do everything we can to put an end to this and reestablish order in America and get our republic back, we're working against the Lord's Prayer there. We're working against our own creed. Thy kingdom come means that all hell breaks loose when he shows up. And if you're dreading the moment that, like lightning from east to west, our King comes and shows himself to save all of mankind from this oppression, if you're dreading that day, then there's something wrong with your eschatology. There's something you're not understanding. Because when he comes, evil is vanquished. And the next thing that happens, whether you have to suffer a little or you don't, the next thing that happens is you're on a bema seat.
Yeah.
With the God of heaven saying, well done, good and faithful servant. And he's putting a gold medal around your neck. And we have been taught as a church to dread that day.
Yeah.
It's a sin. It's a crime. It's a crime.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. And it's so easy for us to lose perspective of that because we're too busy trying to move pieces on the chessboard.
Yep.
There you go, peeps. Not bad, huh?
And that is part A.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vicky can preach, can't she?
Yeah. Vicky knows how to dispense truth, man. It's pretty powerful. She's very
awesome.
grounded.
Yeah.
And she has great insight.
Tricky, did they do part 2? I think you've watched this one.
Yeah, what'd you guys think?
Interesting.
Cactus Kicker says she is a heavy hitter. Yeah, for real.
Get the second part pulled up.
She knows, she knows how to not pull any punches, but she still articulates it in a really cool way.
You know what I like about her? She doesn't use churchy language.
Oh, yeah, dude, no kidding.
She says it in a way that whether you've gone to church all your life, or you're a brand new believer, or you've never been in a church, like it all makes sense. It all sounds the same.
That's a good point.
Not wrapped in that
Churchies.
churchianity.
Mhm.
Yeah, churchies.
Yeah.
Christianese.
Christianese. Yeah. Someone needs to make like a joke dictionary of churchies. You know.
Nicole asked, was this videotaped? We recorded it last week, and we divide the recorded interview into 3 segments.
Oh, good. I'll
Two of
stick
them we
around
play
then.
back to back here on our live stream, and we're about to play the second part. And a third segment is usually reserved for just our patrons. There's an exclusive segment that we recorded just for our patrons. And you can go over there, patreon.com/the Gosslings. I mean, everywhere you get, whether it's Patreon, YouTube, or Instagram, just the Gosslings. You'll be able to find us. Rumble, Twitter. Teespring, Twitter too.
And we do, and Twitter. We do that 1/3 thing for Patreon only. We don't put that behind a paywall just to put it behind a paywall. We do that because that's where we're able to talk about all of the things that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube without getting a channel strike. So it kind of it became a necessity for us after we used to just do these live, and just we Bill O'Reilly it, we'll do it live.
Yeah.
And then we got a couple channel strikes, and we were like, oh, we'll do it this way instead. And we can still ask the questions, that are like the hot button topics. We keep those over here. And then we have the main interview, which Nick edits throughout the week in between recording and airing. And then we have it split up into 2 sections. So this is our intermission to answer the question, and then we'll play the second interview here in a minute.
American Car says it's always worth it. It's the only Patreon I support. We appreciate that too.
Yeah, dude,
thank you.
Yeah,
we appreciate your support, and we're glad that this sounds so corporate. Glad you get a lot of value out of it. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Please fill out this brief survey.
Yeah, yeah. But it's awesome to interact with you guys, chat with you guys. We all get to know each other a lot better in the Patreon as well. But it's cool, like on the live stream every week when we all get together and to see you guys in the chat.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's like getting together. It's all we need is like a barbecue, maybe a fire pit, and we'll be good to go.
Don't tempt me. You know how much I want to do
and
this?
Some
like,
not light beers.
Yeah. You know how much I want to do this like outside around the fire pit, where I just have like
That'd be cool though.
a bottle of Lagavulin and a pack of Lucky Strikes. And you just sit there and I can just watch this and Hunter S. Thompson it.
Yeah. Gabe asked anyone heard from Ice Queen. We haven't heard from her.
No, we need to reach out to her. She's a little tough to get a hold of.
Radio sounds. She might be in transition.
Yeah.
To some degree, but I don't know. It'd be good to see her.
He would know, wouldn't he, Diane?
Yeah.
He'd
If
probably
you're watching
be
this
watching.
on the back end, Ice Queen, we miss you. We hope you're all right.
Yeah.
Thinking of you. Reach out to us and let us know you're doing okay.
Yeah. All right, man. I'm ready for part 2.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys are too.
Yeah.
Never heard of him.
Anything else? Boss Hog is here with us. He's over there in the corner.
Yeah.
We'll have him on here after when we wrap up.
We'll bring him on whenever we're landing the plane. Whenever we're segueing out of here.
All right. Oh,
nice.
Mike Fisher.
Nice.
Oh man, thank you. Keeping it real.
Keep it real.
Yeah, thank you, man. We're trying to. Your support is greatly appreciated. By the way, Mike Fisher's company, Jardani Jovanovich, you guys got to check it out. He is our sponsor. He makes an amazing product, hair and skincare products for men, for dudes. Dudes' faces need love.
That's right. Yes.
Mine
Hair
does.
care products made by real men for real men. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you for the support. Always appreciate it. It's never expected, but it's always appreciated.
Yeah.
Really, really thank you for it.
Yeah. And it really helps us, be able to buttress against the coming
Diane, is he Christian? Is he?
storm of failing equipment. It's like,
No, my headphones cut in and out like
I
through the
know.
whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
If you watch, actually, it was in that interview. If you watch, like a lot of times, you'll probably see it on the back half. Like my arm is down here. I'm not like tickling Nick's kneecap or anything. Like I'm adjusting the mic cord because my headphone mic always goes out. And we're trying.
We're trying.
So
yeah. My
all of that-
microphone has like a buzzing thing that just anyway.
all
We're
of that,
slowly refreshing things as we go.
all that Patreon money, all that ad money, all those super chats, you know, they do
Cool.
not go to like a vacation home or a helicopter.
No.
they're being like compiled.
It keeps
into,
the things clicking. It
Yeah.
keeps the lights working and all that
pays for the
stuff.
subscriptions
Yeah.
to Zoom and Restream.
Yeah, let's play the song and hear it ourselves. This is Diane's link, guys. Oh no, he might be copyrighted. I can't risk it, Diane.
And Restream and all
Yeah.
the other stuff that we have to kind of like, you know, I mean, it's true. It's just like any other business. You really like, you lose, you probably like don't start making money until, because we're 2 years in, two
Yep.
plus years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we probably won't.
We've been
make
doing
a-
this for 2 years, and the first two, I mean, just over 2 years. The first 2 years, we weren't monetized.
No. But even then, we were still paying for it. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
all
totally.
this stuff, you know, it all costs money, and so it'll probably be another year or two before we
Worth
like
it.
start to break
You guys
even.
are totally worth it.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris Caps. Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome, dude. Super chat. Needed this tonight, bros.
Good.
Man, thank you.
That's what we're here for, man. Honestly, that's the great thing about the live chat.
And I get that. I need it too. I like just reconnecting with my,
Mhm.
with my friends here every week.
Yeah.
And there isn't. I watch a lot of I follow a lot of YouTube channels, and you guys comment and get along way better than like
Yeah.
anyone else. I'm always afraid to go and comment because I'm afraid I'm gonna open my big fat mouth and get into an argument. So I just don't. I just don't comment anywhere because I just know I'm gonna regret it. But like with you guys, I mean, there's familiarity. I like chatting with you guys. So you guys make it special and fun. So thank you for that.
Speaking of which, Cactus has a hilarious joke.
What did he say?
Nick tickling. Just over here, Nick tickling.
Speaks Tommy. Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta.
Brother love.
Hashtag brother love.
All right. Enough with that. All right. We're gonna go ahead and play. I'm gonna turn off my camera for some more brother love.
They only come out at night, and demonic oppression, sleep paralysis. That's really your milieu, and that's really what you have done deep dives on. But we've been talking about SRA. How does satanic ritual abuse factor into all of the things that you have really studied over the past several years?
This was sort of a happy accident, I guess. I don't know. So when I was still living in Pennsylvania, and my dad was calling me and freaking out over this like amazing guy he just found, and it was Rusty stuff. And he had gone to a couple conferences and met Russ and heard him talk, and Dad and Russ actually got to be friends, and we got to know Russ a little bit. But when Dad started getting into this, it was right after my mom had died, and I'm just like, I'm in deep grief. The last thing in the world I want to talk about is all this horrible, like, he was starting to tell me about, satanic ritual abuse and stuff. Like, this is not the time. This is not the time I want to absorb this stuff. And I had heard of it before, and
Talia, do you know the show Married at First Sight? I love it. It's really funny.
so it wasn't like brand new, but eventually I started going to conferences with Dad, and at one point we asked that inevitable question. Why are we going to all these conferences? Because at some point we're accountable for this information. And if this is something God wants us to know about and have an understanding of, and giving us the ability to articulate it to others, at some point we're going to be accountable for all of this, knowledge that we're being given. And I thought about, oh my gosh, what if? Oh no. Anytime you think that God might be calling you into some sort of deliverance ministry, your mind immediately goes to like The Exorcist with Linda Blair's head spinning around, and you're like, turning yourself in people's bedroom with like, reading like pea soup flying all over.
Every day's a horror show.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, and because I had gone through so many years of sleep paralysis, which was a terrifying experience, my thought was, if I can't even really handle a sleep paralysis scenario where I'm just alone in my bedroom, how in the world, like, I'm not cut out for this kind of thing, like, no way, man. And so it sort of freaked me out. And Tom Dunn and I ended up meeting through a mutual friend. And the first time I met him, I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And it's not like, oh, we hit it off and we were best buds the first time we met. It's like, I never expected it to happen. So through a stream of events over the course of 3 or 4 years, I started writing for Real Dark News, which is the sort of like the news site that is.
Diane, I gave both them songs a thumbs up so I can watch them when I hang up. I'm not going to play them here because they might be copyrighted, and I really don't need strike on my back. Even risking one.
And I just did that in silence under a pen name of VJ, and that was all I was doing, was just like, hey, writing is my gig, that's my gift God's given me. I'm gonna have the luxury of just hiding in a corner with a pen name and leave me alone. That was kind of my
Nice.
my take, right? Exactly. So so anyway, when it became apparent that God was actually calling me into this, I started taking a lot of the Rusty Star courses, all of which are free on the Shadow of the Darkness website. You just scroll down to free training and hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of teaching. And a lot of it's on spiritual warfare, but he also, Russ was a pastor and he was a preacher, and his main heart was to preach the gospel. And so he's got stuff about the book of Acts and Revelation. He's got other stuff in there too, just amazing stuff. So anyway, that's how I first was introduced into like the deep dive of SRA and learned more about it. And so this is a tough topic to talk about because of the cognitive dissonance on behalf of the church. Nobody wants to believe this, okay?
And some churches practice it.
Yes, that's true too. So when you start to speak about this, one of two things happens. The enemy wants to shut you down because they don't want to be exposed before the right time. So all the trolls come out with their empty threats and their nonsense. But then the church shuts you down. This isn't real. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. But what does happen every time is there is a third, much smaller group of people whose hearts awaken. And they're like, yes, it's horrible. And we don't need to go over every horrible graphic detail. But now knowing that this exists, I'm accountable in some way, whether it's intercessory prayer or all the way to doing counseling and ministry. And there's a whole bunch of gray area in between there. But it certainly wasn't what I was looking to do or get involved in. And I was willing from day one to do it, but I was very scared that I would be a sitting duck because, you think about all the horror movies you see, like all the vampire movies like Salem's Lot and Fright Night, where the guy, the creature brings out the cross and the vampire just crushes it and laughs at him and says, you don't have faith. And, because every single person on planet Earth is a sinner, and there's so much stuff you don't have worked out in your own life, and you have guilt and shame over things, and you have rejection issues, and you have fear, and so you just think, well, I'm just going to be sifted like wheat, like I'm just going to be a target, And so I think that there was a transitional period where I had to get my sea legs, so to speak, and part of what prepared me and gave me courage and gave me an understanding that I was able to do it was some of the stuff that we were talking about in the Patreon portion of our discussion. And that is the things that God called me to do in 2020 and 2021, where I had to walk in faith instead of, I had to shut out all the voices of the fear of man. And there was a lot of things I was called to do. And I don't think I was called to do those things because I'm more spiritual or more holy or less I think that God very specifically orchestrated 2020 and 2021 for me as a boot camp. It was where he was showing me that he would reveal things to me. He would tell me what to pray. He would give me the names of things that needed to be prayed against. He would give me courage. He would overcome the fears of man. And so I don't have a lot of pride in the things that I did in 2020 and 2021 because I was very scared through the whole process. And I see now in retrospect that God was actually training me for a ministry that had 2020 never happened, I would not be ready for. And so there were other things going on there. So I can go into like just the general definition of what SRA is, but I want to pause just in case you guys have something to add.
No.
No, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So SRA is basically, if you Google it, for the most part, you're going to find a lot of disinformation. You're going to find that this is false memory, and it is it's just satanic panic. So you're going to get a lot of disinformation that this doesn't exist, and there's going to be a lot of convincing arguments that is going to quell the fears, and the church is going to breathe a collective sigh of relief that it was just this big hoax put out there to scare people. But the fact of the matter is, it is very true, and it may not have always been called SRA, but this goes all the way back to the days of Cain, to antediluvian times. You know, like I said, they called it different things back then, but it's the same thing. And even though the word satanic is in there, SRA stands for satanic ritual abuse. There's also ritual abuse. And there are groups and societies that basically perpetuate this same agenda that might not be satanic. Because a lot of the SRAs, like true SRA survivors, are usually from generational Satanist families. It's a long, long, long bloodline. You're born into it. And so if you are taken, like if you are abducted and used in one of these rituals, it is ritual abuse, because even though, you know, you weren't in the satanic ritual bloodline, you know, so satanic ritual abuse and ritual abuse kind of go hand in hand, depending on if you're on the inside or the outside of the family, right? But it's not just card-carrying satanic families that are doing this as well. There are militarized versions of this. There are secret society versions of this. And it lies undercover even in the world of sex trafficking. There's a lot of this going on. And it also happens in the BDSM community, which a lot of people, thanks to the Hollywoodized version of 50 Shades of Grey, think that this is just a bunch of consenting adults having fun with whips and chains. But if you actually know what's going on.
Doesn't sound like he needs the record companies, Diane. And you know, you join them record companies, you sell your soul.
In the BDSM movement, in that community, it's in essence the same exact thing as satanic ritual abuse. It is women and men being groomed without their knowledge into this lifestyle in small baby step stages, and it involves high-powered people who are the masters, and it involves really all of the same activities and goals. So if you go into that thinking, well, this will be fun, this is just this lascivious little group of perverts and we can do whatever we want, it at the end of the day, it has very little to do with sex and very little to do with pleasure, actually, as well. So if anyone else is interested in more information on that, Through the Black has had 2 recent shows where a woman has come out of that community and exposes the crap out of it. I mean, she doesn't hold anything back. And so I think the names of those shows are Chainbreaker and I'm not sure. I've got it posted on my Instagram, but there's 2 shows where we've got her on there. I'll see if I can look it up real quick without distracting myself from what I'm talking about here. But anyway.
Well, while you're looking it up, what do you think? What is the goal of SRA?
So the goal, yeah. So the goal, and this kind of plays a little bit into what we were talking about earlier with Black Awakening. The goal is, this goes into the ethos of a generational satanic family. This goes all the way back. Read Gary Wayne's book if you've got a year. Gary Wayne's book, it goes all the way back into the days of Cain. It started with Cain. That's how long it's been around. Now, they didn't call it satanic ritual abuse, or probably didn't even call it devil worship back then, but it was the blood-drinking cults of Kish. And the progeny of Cain, they were in basically the earliest iterations of secret societies, but they were dragon courts, they were blood-drinking cults, and this is where we get some of our modern vampire mythos, but that is highly caricaturized. Obviously, the blood drinking that was going on in the days of Cain wasn't for turning people into vampires or making slaves. It had to do with immortality. We see this carried in today as we talk about the adrenochrome, because the reason why they're doing this is they want eternal life without the Messiah. They're coming up with their own ways. And so transhumanism and technology and this adrenochrome, this drinking of blood, it's a formula for immortality. It's eternal life without Jesus Christ. It's beating the system. That's what they're doing. They want to beat the system. Now,
because if you never die, you never have to answer to God.
No judgment. Yep. And so this is given away in much more clarity in the book of Jasher. And it's talking about the days of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. I think it's in Jasher chapter 4, I think. And it gives a little bit more detail about what they were doing there in the Valley of Shinar, building this tower. In the Bible, in the biblical narrative, it just says, let us build a tower that reaches to the heavens. And that's all they give you. Or that's all that remains in our modern versions, right? In the book of Jasher, it says, very point blank, in a way that almost mirrors the 5 I will statements of Satan in the book of Isaiah. It says that the purpose of this tower is, we will ascend to heaven. We will remove God from the throne. We will set up our own idols in the temple. We will worship our idols there. This Tower of Babel wasn't an architectural feat. This wasn't some sort of antiquated version of, let's build like the World Trade Center and see who can have the tallest building in the Guinness Book. This had to do with the fact that the mountains that had been used previously as stargates, we know that God visited his people on the top of mountains where Moses was on Sinai. The reason he was able to visit with God on Sinai, God didn't just show up, in hiking boots and sit on the top of the hill. That was a dimensional portal on.
Diane, I wonder if that link's still up. I wouldn't be game enough to play that now. They'd give me a strike for that. But the guy you're talking about, his name's Aitlin Childs. That's the Illuminati, got a 5-hour video on it. And it is very compelling.
The top of Sinai. There was a dimensional portal on the top of Mount Hermon where the Watchers came down. There's probably still something going on up there because there's a UN base up there, and there's plaques up there that have very strange inscriptions about the gods and such. And so what this Tower of Babel was an attempt to build a mountain higher than the mountains that were naturally made. They needed a higher mountain. Maybe they hadn't figured out where Everest was at that point, or they didn't have the clothing and the long underwear for it, but they needed something taller than Hermon because they needed to get back in the throne room to overthrow and kill God. And I can get all sorts of freakish on you guys and talk about the the Aramaic meaning of the word to lift up. The word nasa, which is pronounced differently but spelled the same as NASA, is this a modern passing of the baton of the ancient people to the modern people, where, hey, our little tower thing didn't work out, we need something higher.
Mm-hmm.
And if you even go to NASA's website and you look at their vision statement, it flat out says that they're seeking for knowledge for the betterment of mankind. It even has that word knowledge in it, like, you know, the tree of knowledge. And so there's something more going on here than building a tower and sending rocket ships into space. This is an agenda that goes all the way back to Cain. They were thrown from heaven. They were locked out. They lost their first estate. And they've been planning ever since to get back. I will ascend to the stars. And they want to get back into the throne room and retain that scepter of power. They want to rule the nations. And the long and the short of it is their goal that they think that they're going to accomplish out of their hubris is they're going to kill the pre-incarnate Messiah and now the Messiah. They're going to kill Jesus Christ. They are going to take those keys back from him. And so what the generational Satanists are, whether they realize it or not, they've been told they're part of this big whole age-long, you're special, you're chosen, you're the chosen people, we're going to rule the world. They've been told all sorts of grandiose, flattering things. Many of them probably are of the bloodline of those original cults of Kish and of Cain, and they're just passing the baton through the generations. They have a single-minded goal, and it's been the same from the beginning. We're going to get back into that throne room, and we're going to overthrow the Messiah, and we're going to rule this place. And so the generational Satanists are basically the thralls. They're the people that have been duped into carrying out all of this work because they're boots on the ground, right? A lot of these entities are disembodied. They're locked up in the abyss in chains. They're in the astral, and they can't really come down here. They can lure us up there, but if they come down here, they've already tried that once. They know what happens, and so they need boots on the ground to put infrastructure in place and to prepare the minds and hearts of the people for their Messiah. And so the goal of all of this ritual abuse is to mold this perfect group of slaves to be boots on the ground for these entities that can't do the work themselves. And the reason why there's so much treachery and bloodshed and ritual torture and sexual abuse and crimes beyond anything I want to even get into on this program is because, to use Robert Monroe's term, the loosh, if you will, there is an unleashing of power, and there is an ability to open these energy fields, these portals, these stargates, whatever you want to call them. These things are open and generated through rebels, through bloodshed. If you go back to the Old Testament, why were the Israelites, when they got caught up in idols, why were they always getting busted with these massive like orgies and parties and drinking? And why were they? Was it simply just this is a party? Hey man, like
Babylon working.
Yeah.
It's the blood orgy from Event Horizon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a reason why that stuff is so disturbing because, well, A, it's so far beyond the pale, like no one ever experiences it, and B, like it probably works.
Yeah. Yep.
That whole BDSM thing, I've known girls who, were into that kind of stuff, and like it's always like, look, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm okay, thanks, but I've noticed that like all that kind of stuff, whether it was straight or not straight, like all that stuff, it's not about the sex. It's not about the nerve endings. It's not about any of that. It's like this spiritual violative kind of thing
Mhm.
that is like really about submission and compliance,
Yes.
but on a like really deep level. And every time I have any brush with
Yeah.
Hollywood, like it on any level, and it's happened 3 times now, every single time, there's always that element. There's always this like exploitative, submissive, but it's not, even though it's a physical thing, it's obviously not physical. Like that's
Yeah.
not where it stops. You know?
Yeah.
And that's how dangerous and potent it is.
They've weaponized sex.
Yeah.
So to the stupid human beings who think it's all just about the orgasm,
Mm-hmm.
don't understand. And we even know this on a small level, like take all the Satanist stuff out of it. We already know that soul ties are created through that. And anyone who's been through a bad breakup can attest to things like this. And there are physiological aspects to sex where brain chemicals are released, where there's a bonding that makes those sorts of breakups then even more difficult. There are also now some of this information has been run with, and it's been exaggerated and taken to an extreme, but they have done tests with flies of all things, and they've determined that there is genetic material in
It does
the
too,
man's
Tricky.
sperm that a woman retains.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And,
Permanent.
Yeah,
and
it happens with women all the time. Yeah.
Yep. So it doesn't necessarily mean a full genetic code and a DNA sequence and all that, but what it does mean is that there's a chemical in a woman's brain that is only present if she's given birth to a male child or she's had sex. And you can see then if you test a virgin, she's not going to have this particular chemical in the brain. So what happens then, and what they've determined with these flies, with this fly experiment, is they take a female fly and they take 2 males, and they take a small fly and a large fly. So that's the way they tell the difference between the genetics, right? And so they will have one of the flies mate with the female, but then they'll have the second fly actually fertilize the egg. So he's the actual one like responsible for the offspring. And what they've determined is, so if a female fly mates with a large male fly, she will give birth to a fly that grows large. If you have a
No
female
way,
that mates with a
Diane,
small
did he
fly,
really?
she'll have an offspring that turns into a small fly. So what they're recognizing through these experiments is,
And guys, every Trump rally, Trump used to play Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. And when he tried to play Springsteen music, Springsteen's threatened to sue him, but the Rolling Stones let him play Sympathy for the Devil. And he also told that snake parable. You knew I was a snake when you took me in. I heard him do that parable. And Trump Tower is a temple to Baal.
if she mates with a small fly, but a large fly fertilizes the egg, she has a small fly offspring. So the physical genetic code that's transferred to her offspring is
Trump
not the
doing
one
the
that
pyramid
fertilized her egg.
symbol.
It was the initial encounter. And so so what they're learning from this is basically all of this to say is that there are physiological, mental, physical, and spiritual repercussions from that sex act. And so it's not just like the Bible said it's wrong, you're bad, you're a slut, you're a tramp, you're a gigolo. It's not about that was dirty, you should have waited till you were married. We don't understand the doors that get open. We don't understand the complete power and ability that act has to even change who we are as a core person. We've all known those few people that have went off the deep end and had an addiction, and they don't end well, and so I think we have to get away as Christians from thinking that unwanted pregnancy and venereal disease are the only 2 consequences, and oh, God will forgive me, it's okay, I never got pregnant and I didn't get a venereal disease, so I dodged a bullet. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, because there are
Okay, guys, Diane's link. How about we switch to that? Because it looks really interesting. I'll wait and see what you say. It's no point Googling it. I can't show you Google. If you set it on YouTube, which I'll look up. Okay, let's do that link Diane just give us. Excuse me. Who's these guys?
Ever since the very beginnings of Donald Trump's candidacy, a lot of people have wondered if Trump is involved in any secret orders or esoteric groups or the Illuminati. And during his campaign, Newt Gingrich said on Fox News that the elite do not want Donald Trump because he's not part of the club and has not gone through the initiation rites. He doesn't belong to the secret society. Newt Gingrich said that on Fox News, but does that make it true?
Lucy. That man is chair of the English department.
You want a piece of this?
Gingrich is a 33-degree Mason, and Freemasons are encouraged to lie when it comes to their rhetoric. And Albert Pike, the cleric of Freemasonry, admitted this in his book, Morals and Dogma. Masonry, like all religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism, and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages, or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled, to conceal the truth, which it calls light, from them, and to draw them away from it. Truth is not for those who are unworthy or unable to receive it, or would pervert it. He said that in his book, Morals and Dogma. So by his own words, Freemasons purposely hide, they purposely deceive, they purposely lie, they purposely misdirect, because they believe that those who are not their members deserve to be misled. So if Newt Gingrich said that Donald Trump's not a member, and Newt Gingrich is a 33-degree Mason, is it true what he said? This is what we have to look at. And if we are in the end times right now, we can expect that there's going to be deception, because the Bible tells us the great delusion would come. So while this great delusion is pounding the shores of the land, that would mean that in order to survive as a follower of Jesus, it's going to take discernment and examining the fact. And in this video, I'm going to present 3 exhibits that will show evidence that Donald J. Trump is a member of the Freemasons or a dark society. So now let's look at Exhibit A. Donald Trump has an odd way of posing and sitting. He seems to favor putting his thumb and fingertips together and pointing his hand downwards. And as we look at the hand gesture, it appears to be making an inverted pyramid. He's always doing this. So the question is why? And of course, to show intellectual honesty, we must also include that maybe it's just a habit. Perhaps his fingertips are normally attracted to each other and he can't help it. That's the case. It's a subconscious thing, maybe. Or is it deliberate? It is one of the Freemasonry signs. And as we look at the images,
of course it's
they look deliberate.
Full on deliberate.
know, I wondered if he's commanded to do it. Like, if he stops, will someone be unhappy? Or what if he's doing it to earn something? Now, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But these gestures appear to be making the inverted pyramid. But what does that mean? What is the inverted pyramid? Well, to explain it, we're going to look at a quick background of the Freemasonry symbol, the inverted pyramid. Try to get a hold of what I'm about to share in the following primer, because it's going to help explain where I am going with this. And also, if you may be a born-again Christian and you love Jesus, I want you to know that these symbols that I'm going to show you can do you no harm. Now, the inverted pyramid is a symbol that's used by Freemasons, members of the occult, Satanists, New Agers, pagans, and many others who practice esoteric mysticism and dark arts. Its origin is found in the ancient fertility cult of Babylon. It goes all the way back to the beginning of time, when Satan was deceiving the earth at the very beginning. He wanted to come up with a counterfeit to draw people away from the truth of Elohim, of Yahweh. So he came up with his counterfeits to try to replace. And then he also included with the counterfeits the doctrine of his false religion. And he purposely appealed to the carnality of man. His original false counterfeit religion included lust and carnality and promiscuity and adultery and fornication. When the children of Israel migrated into the promised land, they were exposed to the fertility cult in the land of Canaan, where Baal and Asherah were worshipped. A lot of Christians don't know this, but Baal worship is a sexual religion at its core. Many modern Christians erroneously think that the main attraction of Baal worship was bowing down to idols and statues.
Hence all the sects in Islam. Baal's the boss of the Islam religion.
But the real attraction was the sexual activity that went along with Baal worship. Because during their rituals, it was common for orgies to break out to please their fertility god. And through the centuries, mankind has never changed. Today, the residents of Earth also take part in ritualistic fornication under the guise of pagan fertility rituals, especially in America. Can America be great if these things are taking place on our shores? If Burning Man is taking place on our shores, can America be great? Now, Burning Man is not just a small gathering of a few earth worshippers. It's an annual event where tens of thousands of people meet in the desert to have an orgy. Baal worship is everywhere. And let us not forget spring break, become one of the cultural staples of America's young people as they make their passage into adulthood. This occurs every year by the millions. What does this have to do with the upside down pyramid? What I'm establishing is that the upside down pyramid, the inverted pyramid, is sexual. And in this world that denies God, the main attraction of being a human is sexual deviancy and carnality. It's always been about the sexual temptations of man. And as I just mentioned, the children of Israel were confronted with the temptation of fertility worship when they entered the promised land and were introduced to Baal and Asherah. Now, God told them to tear down the altars, but unfortunately they did not. And the corruption spread into their camp. And Baal was made the male deity of the cult, and Asherah was the female. And over time, Satan spread the fertility cult throughout the world. And the original names of the deities evolved into other names as they polluted planet Earth. Asherah goes by several names, including the geographical region where she is worshipped. But Asherah goes by Astarte, Ashtoreth, Esther Goddess, Athiarat, Venus, Isis, Juno, Ishtar, the Queen of Heaven, Aphrodite, Hadad, and many other names. Right here we see an idol of Asherah from an antiquities dig. We see horns on top of her head. Those horns were symbolic of mountain peaks. As archaeologists have made discoveries, they have found stone carvings of the goddess Asherah. We can see right here, the inverted triangle of Asherah represents the female anatomy. And as you can see, the inverted triangle was part of Asherah's renderings and represented the female portion of human anatomy, while Baal represented the male anatomy with the use of pillars and poles. And over time, Baal's name morphed into other names, but the basics remained the same. Fertility worship took place in temples utilizing phallic symbols, obelisks, maypoles, and pillars. And today, these practices continue in pagan religions, cults, New Age ceremonies, and secret orders throughout the world. Now, how important is the inverted triangle to the occult? Well, let's take a look at this. The symbol is extolled by Satanists. This is Lucifer's symbol. The upside down triangle is revered and used in many occult rituals. Right here is an image taken from an early 1900s book of their practice. Now in this one, you can see that this ritualistic talisman utilizes both the upright and the inverted triangle. And then we have another one here. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the inverted triangle has special meaning to those who are allied with the underworld. Now, if you're wondering, what does this have to do with Freemasonry? The answer is dualism. Dualism is the belief that opposites in the universe work together for balance and compatibility. It's a belief that the forces of good and evil need each other, which to them minimizes God and elevates Satan as being equals, because they believe that God and Satan are equals who depend on each other for the universe to function. And as a result, there's no such thing as right and wrong.
Wow.
It's only balance. Now, Freemasons believe that when an initiate of their craft gains a full understanding of dualism, then they will reach illumination. And they have many symbols for dualism, including the tiled floor of many of their lodges. And this is to show the opposites that together work for balance. And dualism is also represented in the very popular Freemasonry symbol of the square and the compass. A lot of regular folks don't know what this means. In fact, a lot of them are told it represents God, the great architect, because a G is inside of the compass and the square. And as you can see, looking at this image, the compass is pointing up, or the upright pyramid, and that represents the male. And then you have the square below it. It represents the inverted triangle. The novice initiate of Freemasonry is taught that this symbol represents God, the great architect. But as we read earlier, Freemasonry purposely deceives those who do not understand. In reality, the meaning of the square and the compass is sexual. The following excerpt explains it. And this was admitted by former 33-degree Mason James D. Shaw, who gave an explanation, as it is known, to Royal Arch initiates. This is what he said about the square and the compass. The real meaning of these great lights is sexual. The square represents the female generative principle, which includes the earth and the base things, sensual nature, while the compass represents the male, the active generative principle, the things above, the sun, the heavens, and the higher spiritual nature. And when the compass is arranged above the square, it symbolizes that the male sun is impregnating the earth with life-producing rays. And he went on to say the true meaning of the square and the compass are twofold. The earthly human representations are of the man and his phallus, and also the woman with her female reproductive organs. And the cosmic meaning is that of the active sun, which is in truth a deity, the sun god from above, imparting life into the passive earth, the earth fertility goddess, who is below and producing new life. Now, folks, try to get a hold of this, because this principle is utilized by all of those who worship their false god. It includes the New Age. It includes Indian Hinduism. It includes the religion of the pagans and the Druids, the Luciferians, the Illuminati. So dualism to them means God and Satan are equals, or right and wrong are the same. And as a result, there is no such thing as sin. There is no such thing as breaking God's commandments, because there are no commandments. Doing what the human soul wills to do is the sum of their law. The dark practice of Satanism also relies on dualism. And one of the mottos of their renowned goat statue, the Baphomet, reveals it, because it points up and down. And that's the motto of the Baphomet: as above, so below. The Baphomet is also a transgender. It's neither male nor female. And the symbol of the Baphomet features the sun above and the dark moon below, black and white. So Satanism also depends on contrast. I mentioned all of that, ladies and gentlemen, so that we can move forward to now look at the evidence. When members of the occult practice their rituals, their motive is to gain and receive strength and riches and prosperity from their deities. They do it in exchange for temporary fame and riches and achievement. Many entertainers have done this. Politicians have done this. This is what Bohemian Grove is all about. They do this for power. In order to gain their power, they have to submit their loyalty to their deities. They do this through secret rituals and also by showing loyalty in plain sight in front of everybody. Now, make note of this, ladies and gentlemen. If they regularly show the symbolic gestures openly and in plain sight, then they are also practicing an invocation to the deity in plain sight. You see, just making the symbol with their hands is not an empty gesture. It's actually an invocation to their gods. And Donald Trump often postures himself with the inverted pyramid gesture. So we have to ask, if he is an active participant of the craft, he's doing it in plain sight. But is that all there is? No. Donald Trump has exhibited and promoted the inverted pyramid in other areas of his life. So now let's look at Exhibit B, the odd campaign button. When he was campaigning, some of his staff members wore a lapel pin that was very strange looking because it was an inverted pyramid with the colors purple and gold. At the time, members of the press wondered about it, but they didn't really pursue it. And as a result, the story didn't really get that much traction. But the question needs to be asked, why? Why did their staff members wear such an odd-looking campaign button? And what did it mean? Right here we see President Communications Director, Press Secretary Sean Spicer also wore it. And then we also see Mr. Corey right here who wore it. He was Trump's campaign manager. Well, that was until he got fired, but he also wore it. So as the press was wondering about it, eventually the Trump team came up with a story. And the Secret Service provided that story, or at least they were the excuse. What they said was these pins were just to help them identify the members of the Trump team so that they could know them from the crowd. Now that may sound good, but it doesn't really explain why they continued to wear the pins when they were by themselves. Here we see a picture of Corey Lewandowski visiting a TV station.
Hey,
doing
Jay,
an
good to see
interview,
you,
and
mate.
he's wearing the pin. Did that help the Secret Service to know that he was still a good guy? This does not make sense. Here's another image of him doing an interview, wearing the pin, but they're not in the crowd now. That explanation doesn't really make sense. And what it appears to be is that they're wearing the pin to send a message to those who are watching them. Freemasons and secret orders love to hide things in plain sight. So if this was a symbolic in-your-face effort to display their symbol, what does it mean? The pin appears to resemble the colors of a Grand Master Freemason, which is an office that presides over a Masonic jurisdiction. And the person holding the title is also referred to.
Wow, so that was a Grand Master color.
Most worshipful Grand Master. Now, there are two ways to obtain this position. The first one is through loyal effort by working their way up. The second method is to become a Grand Master by honorary placement. And there's been several presidents in the past who have received the honorary placement of Grand Master, including Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, and Gerald Ford.
I knew
In
about
this image
Truman.
right here, we can see President Truman in his Grand Master apron. He was awarded the honorary office, and he accepted it. We can see that the colors are gold and purple, which coincide with the office. Now, Freemasonry aprons come in a variety of colors, depending on the office. As you can see right here, the purple and the gold does resemble the pin. Here they are next to each other. So what we have so far is circumstantial evidence, but we're building a case. So where are we? We've talked about the inverted pyramid. We've talked about the origins of the inverted triangle and the upright triangle and what they mean. They are sourced from the fertility cult, going all the way back to the kingdom of Babylon, where Satan invented his religions to counterfeit the true religion, to Yahweh, Elohim, God our Father. And the symbols that Satan came up with originates in the anatomy of both the male and female gender. You have the pillars of Baal that represent the male, and then you have the Asherah, the inverted triangle, to represent the female's genital region. Now, we are going to look at the final evidence. And ladies and gentlemen, please continue to finish this video because it's going to come together as an explosion of reality and truth. Now, let's look at Trump Tower. By now, most of the Western world is familiar with it. It was completed in 1983, and it is 664 feet high. That's the official reported height of Trump Tower. And before I move on, I want to emphasize the present age of that tower because it's very interesting in this narrative that we're looking at. And then when we add Donald Trump, who is now the president of the United States, Trump Tower was built in 1983. It's 33 years old. It was completed on November the 30th, 1983, and then it became the home of Donald Trump. Now, if we do the math, it was completed November 30th, 83. Trump was elected president on November the 8th, 2016, and then the Electoral College cast their votes for him on December 19th, 2016. So when the electoral votes were cast for Donald Trump on December 19th, Trump Tower had just had its 33rd birthday. This means the tower was 33 years old when Trump officially became the president of the United States. Now, does this have significance? Is it a coincidence? Well, let's continue and let's find out. Now, officially, Trump Tower has 58 floors, but Donald Trump added an extra 10 floors to the elevator numbers and claims that it has 68 floors. He lives on the top 3 floors in his penthouse. So in the mind of Trump, his penthouse begins on 466, which is an interesting number. Now, purpose of this disclosure is to determine if Donald J. Trump is involved in Freemasonry or some other esoteric dark art or mystical belief. And folks, based on what I'm about to show you, I believe that Trump Tower offers the best evidence. And I'm about to show you why. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the members of their veiled craft will often conceal information in plain sight. And they will use symbols to represent their beliefs. And also, many religions of the occult and paganism will borrow from one another with similar doctrine. And the reason for this is because they all have the same author, also known as Satan the Deceiver. Now, watch this, folks. The Satanic Church's belief of dualism is represented by the transgender Baphomet, which possesses both male and female anatomy. The Freemasons do the same thing with their square and compass, which represents both male and female anatomy. And when we look at the ancient fertility cults of Baal worship, both the male and female anatomy were represented in the pillars, the Asherah and the grove of trees. Now let's look at Trump Tower. From the ground level, most people have not noticed that the tower's anatomy tells a concealed story because the attention is always at the front gate of Trump Tower, the main entrance at street level. And when Trump was elected president, a lot of people gathered and took pictures. They wanted to see the famous tower, and the New York Police Department had to set up a perimeter to block bystanders from getting too close because it had to be declared a security site and turned into a fortress because America's new president lived there. So a lot of people focused on the front door, but they didn't really look up. Most people didn't study what was above them. When the TV cameras were there and the media was there, they didn't really talk about the outside of the building. And that's because from ground level, it's kind of hard to see what's going on above them. Now, folks, watch this. Based on what I'm about to show you, I'll say it right now. Trump Tower represents the dualism of Baal's pillars. It represents the male portion of the anatomy and the inverted triangle of Asherah. and the mystical grove of trees. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Exhibit C. This is what the evidence has brought me to conclude. It appears that Trump Tower was built to be a temple, number one, and number two, it was built to be a continual invocation to the spirit world. Let me say that again, folks. Trump Tower was built to be in a constant state of spiritual invocation. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it does, but over the past few years, we've witnessed pagan rituals that celebrated the underworld. We have seen it in previous Olympic ceremonies where they did rituals. We've seen it in Super Bowl halftime shows. We've seen it during the Grammys. We saw it when the shamans opened the portals and when Anubis was paraded across the country, the jackal god that presides over the city of death. And now we have a president who is a very unique individual. He's very wealthy, and he lets everybody know that. He loves to parade his wealth and shiny things. He loves to show the display of gold and silver and precious stones. And now he's the most powerful man in the world. Now, folks, he did not get there by accident. And I also do not believe that he got there based on a prophecy by a retired fireman. I believe the fireman prophecy is false, and I've talked about that in all the programs. And I believe that I have provided evidence to prove that fireman prophecy is not true. If you want to read more about it, you can go to my website, watchmanscry.com, and you'll be able to find it in there. Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the world, and he didn't get there by accident. I'm not saying it based on just my opinion. I'm basing it on the evidence of Donald Trump that he has revealed himself. Now, when we look at his penthouse, right here we have pictures of his penthouse. His penthouse is decorated with paintings and artwork that pays homage to the deities of ancient mythology. On his ceiling, he has a painting of Apollo on a chariot being led into the sky by Aurora. He also has Apollo on his mantle. Additionally, we can find other carved images in his penthouse. Here's one of the mythological deities Eros and Psyche. Why does Trump have this? Well, some could say it's just decoration. He's into mythology. He likes the storyline of Apollo and finds it neat. We could say that. Now, before anyone says it's no big deal, I want to remind everyone watching this of the prophecy in the book of Revelation. It's found in chapter 9, and it says, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose the smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." This is a prophecy of what's going to happen during the tribulation period. At some point in the future, God is going to allow the bottomless pit to be open. He's going to allow that hatch to be open so that demon creatures will come to the surface of the earth to lay waste to those under judgment, to those who have rejected God. And then it goes on to say that these demonic creatures have a king over them. Verse 11, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon, which is another rendition of Apollo.
In ancient Greece, Apollo was known as the god king and the destroyer. Plato wrote in Cratylus that Apollo should be feared and could only be appeased through sacrifices. In Homer's Iliad, Apollo sent death, destruction, and pestilence to a city for 9 days. Apollo came down furious from the summits of Olympus with his bow and his quiver upon his shoulder, and the arrows rattled on his back with the rage that trembled within him. He sat himself down away from the ships with a face as dark as night, and his silver bow rang death as he shot his arrows in the midst of them. But presently he aimed his shafts at the people themselves, and all day long the pyres of the dead were burnt. Ladies and gentlemen, Abaddon the Destroyer is Apollo the Destroyer.
This creature's not human, folks. The principality Apollyon has several renditions. including Apollo. He is the destroyer and the building of Satan. Most mythology that has evolved over time is based on the spiritual battle of God versus Satan, or the fall of Satan. And the Hellenistic character of Apollo is one of those. And Donald Trump has him painted on his ceiling. When we look at the end time prophecy of the villain of the tribulation period, the coming little horn, also known as the Antichrist, we can read in Daniel 11:37, it says, "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers." Donald Trump's father is Presbyterian. But if Donald Trump does practice the dark esoteric arts, which acknowledge underworld entities like Apollo, then this would qualify to fulfilling the verse that we find in Daniel 11:37. Because if Trump's dad was a Presbyterian, but Donald Trump himself worships underworld creatures, then neither shall he regard the God of his fathers would be fulfilled in Donald Trump. And if you're wondering, am I proposing that Donald Trump is the Antichrist? Am I saying that right now? I am not saying he is. I am saying that we need to keep him on the table as one of the candidates. Because what if he is? What if he is, ladies and gentlemen? This topic is about Trump Tower. As I stated earlier, most people at the street level only see what's going on at the street level, but they don't see what's going on above them. So now let's look from an aerial view. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the picture. This is Trump Tower before your eyes. The inverted pyramid that represents the female Asherah is built into his building. It's right there. We also see above the inverted triangle 7 pillars rising, which represents Baal. So we have the female and the male in Trump Tower. There's another image of it. Count the points at the top of the building. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 points. And now for the grand finale. Let's zoom in on the inverted pyramid. If you're looking at this image, let's count the trees going across. 1, starting from the left, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you see it? 6 on the top. And then when we count down on the right side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the same thing on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What does this mean? It means that Trump's inverted triangle of Asherah that's on his building in the exterior of his home for the last 33 years represents 666. And it doesn't stop there, folks. Look at this. The fertility cult always places a grove of trees. Trees represent the feminine. And how interesting is it that Trump's inverted pyramid is made up with a grove of trees? And also, when you're looking from afar, the trees appear to look like the private area of a woman's anatomy. It's right there, folks. Some of you are thinking I'm being crude. We're all adults. It is right there. This cannot be denied. Now, is this a coincidence? Did Trump not know what his tower looked like? Of course he did. He designed it. Here's an image of the young Trump standing over his temple. He could put his finger on the triangle and count the steps. He was proud of it. He had to know about the inverted 666 triangle. It was his design. And also when we look at the upper portion, we can see that the upper portion of the building simulates the rising pillars of Baal. And right here, it's plain to see. You can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, what does this mean? Pillars of Baal rise up, and the inverted pyramid transcends down into the earth. Now, right here's a 3D image of the tower to make it a little bit easier to see. And here's another view from the top of the tower, from the roof, looking down. And as you can see, we have the 7 points below, and then the pyramid toward the end. This is looking down. So we have the 666 pyramid sitting on 7 mountains. Here's a close-up of the 666 inverted triangle. Now, folks, here it is before our eyes. It's right here. And Donald Trump was either deliberate with the tower's design or it was an accident. But do you think it was? When we take all of the things we've looked at, I believe that Donald Trump was deliberate with the design of the tower, which completely tells the story of Baal's pillars and Asherah's fertility. And I also submit this. Because of this design, the tower has served as an ongoing invocation to the spirit world on Donald Trump's behalf. He did this so that he would be rewarded with earthly riches and power. Now, let me take it even further. Trump Tower is a temple to the deities of the underworld, and his penthouse is a temple to Freemasonry. Now, let's look at the interior of Manhattan's Freemasonic Lodge. This is from Manhattan's Lodge in his same town. Now, look at the chandelier on the ceiling. It's round, and there's two of them. There's a pair of them, and toward the bottom of the chandelier is a little bulb that extrudes. Now, let's look inside of Trump's penthouse. Look at his chandelier. They are similar. Is that all there is? No. Freemasonic lodges will often feature the twin pillars of Jacob and Boaz. That's the name that God gave to Solomon when he built the temple for Israel that was dedicated to him. God told him to place two pillars on the outside and name them Jacob and Boaz. And Jacob means he will establish it, and Boaz means by his strength. So together it means by his strength, God will establish it. And often in their Freemasonic lodges, they will place imitations of Jacob and Boaz. Pair the two pillars. Here we see another Freemasonic lodge, and we can see that they have the pillars in pairs. There's several images right here. Now, let's look at Donald Trump's penthouse. The pillars are installed also in pairs. So there you go, folks. The evidence is before you. And I conclude, and I am of the opinion that based on what we have seen, Donald Trump is a cloaked member of Freemasonry. And he did not become the president by accident. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned that 3 presidents were given the office of an honorary Grand Master. I am also proposing this. Based on what we have seen, I am led to believe, in my opinion, that Donald Trump was given an honorary placement in the Freemasons. If he is not an active member, he was at minimum given an honorary title. And that is why the pins were placed on his staff. It was to communicate that he was acknowledging it and he was thankful for it. Based on what we have seen right here, it is my opinion that Donald Trump made deals with the elite and with invocations to the dark arts in order to become the president. Now, granted, I could be wrong. I understand that. I could be. And if it's proven that I'm wrong, I'll recant what I'm saying right here. I will repent to what I'm saying right here. But the evidence tells quite a different story. So in conclusion, here's what we have. Trump Tower features the number 666 on an inverted pyramid that is built into his building. We also have that the edifice of Trump Tower exhibits 7 sections that rise like 7 pillars of Baal. We also have that Trump's penthouse is on the 66th floor. We also have that his penthouse has mythological deities on his ceiling. He also has paintings and artwork of the deities. He possesses mythological deities in the form of statues, and his interior replicates the inside of a Grand Lodge. His chandelier resembles what we find in the Grand Lodge, and the pillars inside his penthouse are also in pairs. Now, I could go on, but this video is already long enough. I'm going to be continuing this research. You can go to my website at watchmanscry.com. I have an ongoing series called The Trump Chronicles, and you can see the hard copy of this video at my website. In an upcoming installment, we're going to be looking at Donald Trump's coat of arms. I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to show that aside from the Order Out of Chaos eagle that's on one of his coat of arms, there's also other symbolic images that pay homage to deities of mythology and the underworld. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to this channel. If you appreciate what we're doing, go to my website and send an email. Let us know what you think. And with that, take care, folks. Thanks for watching.
Hang on, guys. I'm looking for the next one.
So working in Newcastle, there's a lot of sparkies out there. Your brand's got to be spot on.
We're saying that this thing has never been visible.
Okay, I don't know about this guy.
All right, what's up, guys? It is Wednesday, March 15th. This is End Time Headlines, and I am your host, Ricky Scaparo, the founder, the pastor, and the voice of End Time Headlines. We've got a great program for you tonight. I'm going to show you 3 headlines tonight that are types and shadows of the days of Noah. These are probably, most people have not paid attention to.
Found a better one.
From the eternal sea he rises, creating armies on either shore, turning man against his brother, till man exists no more. The book of Revelations predicted it all.
Judgment is unleashed upon the empire of the beast. And at the end of this, Jesus, the Son of Man, returns to the earth of the armies of heaven to confront the beast at Armageddon. This is a kinetic war. The armies of the beast are post-human legions.
Okay, Kelly,
They're
God bless.
operating advanced technology. It is a kinetic war, and there's a lot to be said. But the point here is that my name is Timothy Albrino, and you are watching End Times Productions. Jesus said that the end of the age, which is the age in which we now live, the age of Pisces, will be like the days of Noah. And he said that people would be eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, and then destruction would come suddenly. But there's also, I don't want to use the word inconspicuous, I'll say it, but there's also an inconspicuous allusion there to other things that were happening in the days of Noah, namely the advent of the Watchers and the giants. So at the end of the age, I believe that we will see, to some degree, a repeat of the events that transpired before the flood of Noah.
Okay,
We will
Tricky,
see
God bless, mate.
the birthright of mankind usurped by hybrid beings in the same way that it was usurped in the Genesis 6 affair. But this time, it's not just going to be a group of watchers, in my opinion, who copulate with human women and produce hybrid sons who take dominion of the earth. Rather, this time it's going to be the dragon. And
Guys, I might save this one for its own stream because it's 666 in the last generation of humans. So I think that deserves its own stream. I might switch back to one for Israel, Jews finding Christ. Might go there.
angels who take human wives, who copulate with them, and who procreate through them human hybrid offspring, who will become the kings and rulers of the earth. I believe that this event, this is very complicated and we don't have to get into the details. I do go into them in my book. I believe that this event is illustrated in the dragon and the beast from Revelation, the 7-headed dragon and the 7-headed beast from the book of Revelation. The dragon standing on the shore of the sea, presiding over the rise of the beast. The beast basically mirrors the dragon, 7 heads, and so forth. And I believe, again, it's very complicated. It's detailed in the book, but I believe this is in
going out, and I was coming back home from, I remember one night in particular, it was snowing out, and I was coming back home from, it was a club, and I drank. I shouldn't have been driving. I was driving, and I remember I was coming around a bend, and I must have fallen asleep. But when I woke up, I was in this embankment, and there was just a pile of snow. And I remember waking up, and the first thing I thought of is, thank you, God. I always looked forward to Passover because my mom would make her matzo ball soup, and nothing compares to her matzo ball soup. I love it. Growing up in a believing home, it was hard because I always believed in God, but it was almost as if it was my parents' faith. It wasn't mine. I always felt a little different. I always believed in Yeshua. I believed in Jesus. One time, our congregation, we had a parade where we would march through. It was a Labor Day parade, and we were holding the banner to our congregation as we walked through the street. And this Jewish guy, he came up to me in a very hostile, belligerent way and told me, "You need to pick which side you're on. You need to choose who you believe in." But as I got older, especially in my teenage years, is when I really started to surround myself with the wrong crowd. The first time I got drunk, it was at a neighbor's house. I was probably 13 or 14 years old. It was just a gradual process that night, just taking little by little, drinking. I just remember crashing the next day, just feeling hungover, having such a bad headache. And it was just a slippery slope. Drinking led to smoking, led to getting into other drugs. I remember one night I was laying in bed and I was just so hungover, so sick. And I just remember thinking, is this? Is this? There's more to life than this. One person who had such an impact on my life is Alma. I used to work at the bank. I would come to work many days hungover, and she used to come up to me and tell me, "I can smell the alcohol on you." But one thing that Alma did is she would always show the love of Messiah with me. Never once was she preachy or telling me, "Oh, if you do this, you're going to hell," or "Don't do this, don't do that." She truly showed the love of Messiah. At the bank, she would talk to me about certain scripture verses, or she would share some Bible verses with me. And I'd tell her, Alma, be quiet. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. And I was so hungover and I was helping a customer. It's pretty graphic, but I had to throw up. And so I remember running to the back room. We had a break room, and I remember just throwing up. And I just remember feeling so low. And Alma walked into the back room, and I just thought, oh, here it comes. She's going to come preach to me and tell me how I'm living in sin and how I'm living is wrong. She asked me if she could get me some soup. And I just remember feeling so low, so convicted. But at the same time, I remember feeling this love that she offered. And it was this pure, genuine love that I knew came from God. But I remember those verses that she would share with me, they'd be running through my head, and I couldn't get them out of my head. And I hated it because I remember being out at a club or at a party, and those verses would be running through my head. I started to notice that things were changing in my life, where we were out in a club in DC, and usually I'd be out with my friends, drinking, getting drunk, and it'd be a good time. But this night was different because I decided I didn't want to drink anymore. I didn't have that desire. I started to feel almost sick, physically sick when I would drink. I saw the emptiness. I saw the loneliness, the sadness. To be honest, everyone just looked like zombies, just moving around. And I remember just very vividly this feeling that this is what I used to look like. And I just remember so clearly just this voice inside saying, "You don't belong here anymore. This is not your home anymore." That was the last time I went into a club. It was one night in particular. We were at this Bible study. The youth pastor was sharing the gospel. He started to share the gospel, and it started to impact me. It started to speak to me about the good news of Yeshua and what God has done by sending his son, and how much God loves us, and how God wants a relationship with us. Not just religion, not just a bunch of rules where you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. He wants relationship. He wants fellowship. And I remember sitting there that night just feeling so convicted. How can a holy, righteous God love me? And it was just this emotion that came over me. And it was almost as if for the first time in my life, I truly experienced the love of God. And I just remember weeping and crying. And I just felt just God embrace me and hug me and let me know that he loves me. Where I knew that this was real. This wasn't just this religious high or this experience. I knew that I had an encounter with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the universe who created the heavens and the earth. And I felt his love in such a personal, intimate way. I always believed in God, and it was almost like I knew it up here, but I didn't know him here. I didn't believe it. I didn't experience it for myself. But when I truly experienced the forgiveness, the love that God offers, it transformed my life. It changed my life. I believe that believing in Yeshua, believing in Jesus is the most Jewish thing I can do. I believe that Yeshua is the promised Messiah that we read about in Moses and the prophets. I can't think of anything more Jewish than to believe in the Jewish Messiah.
To Israel at that time. I was like a patriot of the Soviet Union. The kids in my class, they tried to beat me. So I was seriously fighting with them. And they were telling me that you are a dirty Jew or something like that. They were making fun of my last name because it didn't sound Russian or Ukrainian. And it was in many cases related to the fact that I'm Jewish. It was painful. There is no God, but there are Jewish people. It's actually the third generation of Jewish atheists in the former Soviet Union. We kept our very strong Jewish identity. I don't remember anybody in my family who was not Jewish. And we didn't want to create any more troubles by believing in God. So, no God, but Jewish people. And as the former Soviet Union began to collapse, we experienced such a wonderful freedom suddenly to be proud of being Jewish. I learned about the Holocaust for the first time. Some of my relatives died in Babi Yar during the Holocaust in Kiev. I started learning Hebrew. I became very strong Zionist. I went to a synagogue, not to worship God though, but to have fellowship with other Jewish people. My Zionistic dream became true. I moved from Ukraine to Israel. As I arrived there, I was literally ready to kiss the land. But one day, I came to the Wailing Wall in the old city, Jerusalem. And I was standing there, and it was a feeling, oh, I reached the destination. That's the highest moment of my life. I came to the wall, and I touched it. And I instantly believed in God. It was like electricity struck me. A couple months later, I had to make a decision. I decided to ask God, and the only way I knew was to write a note with my question to put in the Wailing Wall, for God to read it. In my note, I asked him about the direction and guidance for my life. I promised that I will never complain about it. The very next day, he sent me back to Ukraine, and I was complaining like crazy. It was a foolish promise. I'm on my way back to Ukraine, and somebody gives me the New Testament in Russian, and it was my main language at that time. It's not for me. I'm Jewish. It's not a Jewish book, not at all. But at the same time, it's the book, and I love the books. I cannot say no to a book. So I took it. I had a Jewish friend. He was one of the most Jewish person I have ever met at that time. I appreciated my friend very much, and I respected him a lot. He was a really good friend for me at that time. He told me, "You're a sinner. You go to hell. The only way to be saved is to believe in Jesus." It's crazy. I'm Jewish. I don't believe in Jesus, and I'm not going to believe in Jesus. I consider the New Testament an anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish book. I was surprised as I opened and started reading this. It was full of Jewish history, Jewish humor, Jewish worldview. It appeared to me even more Jewish than the Talmud. I didn't consider myself as a sinner before. Good education, good career, good decent life, Jewish angel. But on that very day, I knew that I'm a sinner. Something was wrong with me. I'm not as good as I thought I was. I never committed serious crime. Not because I was so good, but because I was afraid of the consequences. I felt so dirty. The very next day, I told my parents that I believe in Jesus and I follow Jesus as the Messiah. They thought that it's just for a season, a new crazy idea that I have. With the time, they learned to live with this. I realized Jesus is Jewish. He's the king of the Jews. He's one of my own people. He's the ideal Jew. He is ideal Israel in certain way. I became so proud and so happy to be Jewish because we have such a Messiah, such a king, such an example to follow. Now I know that I have personal relationship with the God of Israel. I talk to him. I know that I'm in his presence. He speaks back to me.
Amen.
I see his hand and he's working in my life on a daily basis. And it's something like very deep peace inside of me. And in my soul, I can sense, I can feel this connection to him. The connection that I never used to experience before that night.
I'm Andrew Clavin. I got the worst possible mark in every class in Hebrew school. And my father used to say they can't flunk you out of being Jewish, but I came very close. I came very close. By the time I was bar mitzvah, I was so completely estranged from this entire tradition. I didn't want to do it at all. It meant nothing to me. I gave in. I had to. I was forced to be bar mitzvah and say these things that I didn't believe. So I ad-libbed the Hebrew in my bar mitzvah because, like, I really had barely learned the portion of the Torah I was supposed to read. I was making up Hebrew words to get through it. Just anything I could to get through. And at that time, when you had a bar mitzvah, people just piled presents on you. Savings bonds, money, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of jewelry that I got from my bar mitzvah. And I put it all in this big leather box, which I also got from my bar mitzvah. It was the first time I ever had any wealth that was my own. I was 13 years old and I was very excited by it. And so I had this box and I would keep it in a little closet, a little pantry kind of closet in my room. And every now and again I take it out and just kind of stare at this. I never wore a lot of jewelry, but I would just stare at this wealth that I had accumulated. But over the course of, let's call it the next 6 months, the joy of this wealth started to seep out of me. I began to feel that I had done a truly hypocritical thing. These are ill-gotten gains. I was bought off. I let someone give me money to say what I did not believe. I kind of naturally had a sense that God was there, but I hated the hypocrisy. I hated the fact that I'd been bullied into something. I hated the fact that I'd been bought off. And it started to dawn on me that it must have been very important to me that I had lied about God specifically. And one night, I waited till the entire house had gone to bed. And I took out this box full of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. And I crept outside and I stuffed it in the garbage because I felt so bad about it. I remember I could feel, even whenever I talk about it, I can feel the broken eggshells and the coffee grounds on my arm because I shoved it down deep because I was afraid somebody would find it before they would throw the garbage away. And in the morning, the garbage men came and they took the garbage and this jewelry and they threw it away. And that was meant to be the end of my religious life. I loved stories. I wanted to be a writer for as long as I can remember. I loved tough guy stories because I didn't get along with my father. I needed a male role model, and I turned to stories like by Ernest Hemingway and the tough guy detective stories of Raymond Chandler and The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. These tough detectives. And I thought these are the kinds of men I want to be like. These are the guys who walk in a corrupt world, but they carry this kind of integrity inside themselves. As I studied literature, I realized that Jesus was at the center of all of Western literature. I should find out about this. I should find out about it. I went into my bedroom and I closed the door and I started to read the Gospel according to St. Luke. One of the funny things about the Gospel is that people have this concept of gentle Jesus, meek and mild. If you can go into the Gospel and find a place where gentle Jesus, meek and mild exists, I will pay to see it, because Jesus is a hard man. He walks into these deadly situations. Even when they're threatening him with death, he just says what he has to say. And that to me, especially in this world of lies, that to me is so important, such a great model for any man. And my father liked to sabotage anything that I did. So like if he heard me writing, if he heard me typing, he'd always break in on me and try to mess up my concentration. And so while I'm reading this, he walked in without knocking. He threw open the door and he caught me reading the Gospel according to St. Luke. Now you have to think about this for a minute, right? I'm 15 years old. He could have walked in on me with a girl in the bed. I was doing that. But he walked in on me reading the Gospel according to St. Luke, and he was furious. I mean, the rage came out of him in little bits because he was trying not to let it out, but it kept bubbling up out of him like hot tar, and he couldn't stop. He was cursing at me. He was using, foul language, and he would keep bursting out. And we went in to have dinner, and we'd sit down, and it kept coming out, and it kept coming out. And I'm trying to explain to him, I'm not reading it for religious purposes. I'm not reading this for religious purposes. I'm reading it for literary purposes. I just wanted to know what all these guys were writing about. And he pointed his finger at my nose and he said, if you ever convert, I will disown you. I'll disown you. And there was only one ambition that I had. I wanted to be a novelist. That was what I wanted. I applied to the University of California at Berkeley because it was so far away from my New York home. And I went into the first of my terrible, terrible depressions. I called them the bola, because they were like that throwing thing, just kind of appear out of nowhere and wrap itself around my throat and choke me with this sorrow. And I was torn up. I was so broken and crazy inside that I didn't understand how to communicate with other people, how to write stories. I knew I had a talent for writing stories, but I couldn't write stories that people liked because my mind was so messed up and I was so full of rage and twistedness. It didn't appear. I wasn't like a crazy person. You looked at me and you would have thought, well, he seems like a really, all put together guy, but I was not. I was really broken inside. And I didn't know I was going insane. I didn't realize I was going mad because I had that romance of the intellectual. An intellectual is miserable. An intellectual faces things. He tells the truth. He looks life in the eye, and life is meaningless and life is death. And because he sees these things, he's a man of sorrow. And so I just thought I was a typical intellectual. It's like that song. It's hip to be miserable when you're young and intellectual. That's what I thought I was. But I was in so much pain. I did begin crying out to God in this kind of sick, superstitious way. I mean, I remember, trying all these kind of spiritual experiments to try and get clear. I published a novel when I was about 26, and the book didn't sell. I couldn't publish it, and it just died. It was such an experience of grief. I didn't even feel the grief, and I just started to unravel. And at the same time, my wife became pregnant. I'm trying to write, and I'm picking up a little bit of money, but we're slowly going broke, and I'm slowly going crazy. I'm just going crazy. My books became unreadable. My writing, I'd always prided myself on this clean, clear American prose, and suddenly I was writing these convoluted sentences that nobody could understand. I not only couldn't sell my books anymore, I couldn't even get an agent. I couldn't do anything. I was just frozen. I was so depressed. I was in my bedroom, and my wife was outside. Sometimes she would sleep on the couch so I could work in the bedroom because that's where my desk was. My little baby daughter was in her nursery. I was drinking, not heavily, but I was drinking a scotch and smoking cigarettes, and I was thinking about killing myself. I had had suicidal thoughts before, but this was different. This was the real deal. I was sitting there thinking, I don't know how to live. I do not know how to live. And there was a radio playing a baseball game, a Mets game, and it was just playing in the background. I wasn't listening to it. I was just sitting. I was thinking about throwing myself off the roof because we lived in an 8-10-story building, and I was just thinking I could just walk up there and everybody would be happier. My wife would be better off. My daughter would be better off. I don't know how to live. In the baseball game, the Mets had a player that I just loved named Gary Carter. And Gary Carter was a devout Christian. And whenever they would interview him after a game, you know, how did it feel when you hit that home run? He would say, "Oh, praise Jesus, you know, Jesus, I'm so happy I hit that home run." And I used to think like, "Oh, Gary, stop!" You know, it just went right up my spine. It was like somebody had dropped a worm down my back. You know, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And after the game, I'm sitting there considering suicide, drink in one hand, a cigarette in the other. And after the game, Carter won the game by beating out a single to first base. In other words, he hit a ground ball and he ran so fast that the throw was late and he got to first base before the throw, which was amazing because Carter's knees were gone. He was a catcher and he spent all this time squatting. He had terrible knees. So after the game, the interviewer came up to him and said, "How could you run so fast when your knees are so bad?" And if Carter in that moment had said, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," I wouldn't have heard it. I was no way ready for that. I had pushed God completely out of my life. But he didn't. What he said was, sometimes you just have to play in pain. I remember thinking, I heard that, and I remember thinking, well, I can do that. I'm a tough guy. I've always been a tough guy. I can play in pain.
Me too.
And that was the answer. How do you live? Sometimes you got to play in pain. I think about that a lot these days, and that this Christian ball player who was clearly given these words by God to speak to me, that he didn't use God's name, that I wouldn't have heard God's name, that the King of the universe put himself out of the picture to reach me. That's, you know, a kind of humility that you don't see in a lot of people. Anyway, that was the last time I ever thought of suicide. I was reading a book, a sea adventure story, great book. I love Patrick O'Brien, great author. At the end of this chapter, it said, his name was Matron. It said, Matron said a quick prayer and fell asleep. And I thought, well, if he can say a prayer, because he was a very intellectual character, I really loved him. It was a series of books. I just really identified with this character. I thought, if he can say a prayer, I can say a prayer. And here I was, my career was going great. I had married this woman I just adored. I had 2 children I just adored. I was so happy that I had come through this period of pain and emotional breakdown and had changed everything in my life. So I said a 3-word prayer. I said, "Thank you, God." And I went to sleep. The next morning I woke up and everything had changed. I was suddenly more alive. I suddenly saw everything more clearly. I had been trying to see things clearly since I was a little boy. I remember as a child thinking, I can't get past my daydreams. I can't get past my own thoughts. And suddenly, there it was. There it was. Everything was beautiful. Everything, my wife. I could see my wife's face. I could see the coffee in the cup. I went out into London, one of the most beautiful cities on earth, and I could see the city, and it was all clear. And I realized it was that prayer. It was those 3 words. 3-word prayer. And it was kind of an intellectual experiment for me, but for God, it was the lifeline that he needed. It was the connection he was looking for. What I had been looking for in my life as a writer, as an artist, I had been looking to be directly connected to life. You can't be directly connected to life until you're connected to God.
You're in a hotel having sex with like 10, 15 people. It's very scary. My hourly rate for escorting was $20.
When you are in the mind of the character, you're there. You're just completely believing what he says. And that way, you let the story go. You let it go.
We just slated that for later, guys. History.
One of the top 50 most influential minds in the world. I was a visiting scholar at Harvard University. I've spoken at
Good night, Diane. This is the last one anyway, guys. I was just about to hang up.
every major university in this country, have over 650 research publications, voted the R&D magazine Scientist of the Year. I'm in the National Academy of Inventors. I'm a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, over 120 patents, started 7 or 8 companies. We work in areas that range from medicine to material science, to electronics, computer memory, medical devices. We work across a broad range of areas. But more than any of that, what means the most to me is that I'm a Jew who believes that Jesus is the Messiah. I grew up just outside of New York City. I thought everybody was Jewish. I didn't even know that there was anything else. I had no particular interest in that, other than when all my friends were getting bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed, and then I would attend, of course, every week. There was never really any excitement for me. I remember once I even tried to talk to a rabbi. He just brushed me off. There was very little explanation for me. I remember when I went to college, I started meeting a number of people that said that they were born-again Christians, which was sort of an odd term. What's born again? What do you mean, born again? One person saw me in the laundry room and he said, "Do you mind if I give you an illustration of the gospel?" And I remember we sat there and he actually started to draw a picture. A cliff with a man on one side, and he drew a little man, and then another cliff with God on the other side, and a big chasm in between that he labeled with sin. I looked at him and I said, "I'm not a sinner. I've never killed anyone. I never robbed a bank. How could I be a sinner?" And he had me read a verse from the Bible. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. In modern Judaism, we never really talked about sin. I don't remember ever talking about sin in my home. So he turned to another passage. Jesus said, "I say to you that everyone who looks upon a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Pow! I felt just as if I'd been punched right in the chest. Here I was, new in college. I didn't think anybody knew. I would pick up these magazines and I became addicted to pornography. It was just through those magazines. And all of a sudden, something that's written in the Bible, somebody who lived 2,000 years ago is calling me out on it. And I felt immediately convicted. And that now I realized I was a sinner. When I read in the scriptures what sin is, then I knew I was a sinner. How am I going to get to God? We Jews know this better than anyone else. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin. This description in Isaiah 53 of how he will bear upon himself my sin, the things that I had done, and this was him. This was the man that took this upon himself on the cross. The perfect God comes and gives himself for us. He is the one that gives himself for us. I started to realize how Jewish the New Testament is. This book is so Jewish. The New Testament is so Jewish. It's all around Jewish people. And then on November 7th, 1977, I was all alone in my room. The realization that Yeshua is the one who died on the cross. And I said, "Lord, I am a sinner. Please forgive me. Come into my life." And then all of a sudden, someone was in my room. And I opened my eyes. I was on my knees. I opened my eyes. Who was in my room? That man, Jesus Christ, stood in my room. This amazing sense of God. Jesus was in my room and I wasn't scared. All I started doing was just weeping. The presence was so glorious because he was there in my room on that day. And I didn't want to get up. And this amazing sense of forgiveness just started to come upon me. That was it. Finally, I got up. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to tell. Here's this Jewish kid from New York City. What am I going to say? My cousins were shocked. "How could you do that? You're Jewish." Telling my mother how I had invited Jesus into my life. She didn't say much. She was weeping. She told my father they weren't happy at all. And she said, "I don't blame them for killing Jesus after the things that he said. Who is he to come against these religious leaders that have dedicated their lives to helping people? and to tell them that they are whitewashed tombs. Who is he, this young man in his 30s, to say this to these scholars? He got what he deserved, and my mother's a very deep, pensive, careful reader. She read from Genesis right on through the Tanakh, the whole thing. When she got done, I said, "What did you think?" She said, "God warned us over and over again. He warned us." When my daughter was about 15, my mother and father came to visit us. At one point, my mother went into her room for several hours. She came out. She said, "What a young girl you have." She talked to me for a long time. She started reading the Bible again, both the Old and the New Testament. One day, not long after that, she called me on the phone at the age of 72. She said, "Jimmy, you wouldn't believe what happened." I said, "What happened?" She said, "I was just reading, and it hit me. It hit me. The way he gave his life. I believe it now. Jesus is the Son of God."
Okay, guys, I'm out. God bless. See you tomorrow.